2? What's the happening? What's going on? What's the deal? What's crackling? Da 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 da. Okie dokie. Why is it all red? Do you think so? I have no idea. Why is it all red, do you reckon? I'm not too sure. Why is it all hot and red? Go back to green now. Make sure everyone's leaking in one by one. Open tabs number 9. You know how the deal, you know what it's about, you know what we do, you know the situation. We're chilling, relaxing, living our best life and all that malarkey. Let me actually go through and open up a new window. Actually, that might be the deal to do it, actually. Yep, here we are. We are open tabbing. Episode number 9. I hope you well wherever you may be. Chilling, relaxing, doing the damn bee and all that malarkey. You know what the vibe is. You know the situation. You know where we be. Making the best out of a pretty minute day. Oh God. It kind of feels like there's hardly anything going on at the moment, in it, really, to talk about that's of any kind of substance. So please, forgive me for all the kind of cringy topics that I've included in the title, but c'est la vie. Yeah. Oh, honestly, some of these things I don't even want to hear myself talk about, to be completely honest. But this is where we are, this situation that we are in at the moment. We have to make the best of it. That is what we have to do. If this can load for me, that would be great. Let me just make sure that I get this and pause it. Hopefully it doesn't crash. Waiting for 1 iota of strength. Let's do this. Honestly, some of these things I don't. There we go. Unmute site. Let's make sure everyone knows what to do here. Okay, before we continue, let's do this. All my stuff needs where it needs to be. This is us chilling, making the best of the time that we have available. Because what else do we have to do? It is the time that we have together. Gotta make the best of it, my friends. Gotta make the best of it, my friends. Okay, let's make sure we got all this where it needs to be. Alright, so hopefully that works. Yep, it does. Just make sure this is working as it needs to be working. Cool. Let's take that off. Bang. And let's put that in there. Make sure that's nice and pinned. Anyways, so we are back and ready to roll. I think I've got all that worked out. So as per usual, thanks again for tuning in. Open tabs number 9. I'm sure this is the episode. Should be episode number 9. Let's make sure that's even. Episode number 9. Loads of nice topics to get into. Of course, if it's your first time, check out the show. Make sure you're smashing that like, hitting that subscribe if it's your first time around here. And of course, donations tips actually via Streamlabs is always more than welcome. You can find a link in the stream chat, should be there available. Of course, if you select on there, a little question or whatever you write should come up there when you tip and stuff. So that would be nice to get those graphics on up and loaded. So yeah, tips are welcome via Streamlabs. Find a link in the chat, and here we go. So first thing on the docket, first thing to talk about. Have you guys seen this? Do you know who this guy is? His name is Daniel Silva, right? This is the guy, Daniel Silva. This dude right here. So supposedly he was a contestant on a show called is it Ink Master? What is it called? Ink Master. Da 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 da. What is the show called? Tattoo art. Yeah, Ink Master. He was a contestant on Ink Master, and if you remember, maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, he got involved in a pretty serious car accident which resulted in the death of his best friend. I think he was celebrating his birthday and they got a little bit too a little bit too crunk, a little bit too hyphy, a little bit too excited, and decided to get in his expensive McLaren, a supercar that you probably shouldn't be driving. There seems to be a tendency and a current trend going on at the moment, all of these newly minted influencers who have too much money and are probably spending their money on the cars that they probably shouldn't do at the time of their lives or they're in at the moment, driving those supercars. If you're familiar with those sort of car shows, they're not the most easiest of cars to manage, even if you're a very experienced driver. So I can imagine somebody quite young who hasn't necessarily had enough experience driving other whips will find it hard to handle. And then of course, unfortunately, they got involved in an accident, ended up smashing into a pole or something, and which resulted in the death of his best friend. So the story was pretty tragic, right? But then when you find out and you dig deep into it and you find out that they were both intoxicated, they still got behind the wheel, even though we live in the era of Uber, and there clearly is no excuse really, for the most part, it feels like, to get involved in anything that kind of resembles a DUI at all. There's too many options out there for you to kind of avoid those circumstances. I think in the past maybe there was some sort of wouldn't say validation, but you could be excused for maybe taking a chance and getting in a car a little bit tipsy and deciding to go home. I remember when I was younger that used to be a thing, right? You'd get in people's cars, and even sometimes family members, uncles and stuff will take you back home after they've been smashing Stellas at a party somewhere, and you'll be in the back like just holding onto the seat hoping you get home in one piece. And usually you did, right? Oddly enough, you didn't really get involved in an accident. I guess there was a bit of fight or flight going on with whatever relative that you had, but it's not something that you'd want to do nowadays, especially again considering the profile of these guys. They're very well known. Any sort of accident that you do get involved in, it's not going to just get swept underneath the rug. They've obviously again have so much disposable income that gives them access to cars that they probably shouldn't be driving at this stage of their lives. And in general, with those sort of whips, the consequences are pretty grave, right? You drive a supercar with enough horsepower and you don't know how to handle it, you could really get yourself in a really sticky situation. We've seen many Hollywood stars unfortunately perish in that kind of fashion. But the story is pretty tragic, right? Overall, in general, right? A very well-known Ink Master reality TV show guy that does tattoos, who's kind of coming up, and then he unfortunately gets his YouTuber friend, I think he's a big YouTuber, killed in the process. The funny thing, or the humorous side of this, not humorous at all, but anyway, you know what I mean. The interesting thing about this is that somehow Brendan Shaw inserted himself into this, right? And I think he got a tattoo from this guy just before the accident happened. I'm not sure which one it was. It was a number of one of his kind of stupid tattoos that he has. And then after the incident happened, he was kind of very quick to say that it wasn't his fault. There's more to the story. They were both just kind of excused the behavior, which was pretty inexcusable, to be completely honest. And then when you read the story, it makes it even worse. So, this is obviously his Wikipedia. So this is the actual incident itself, right? You got Daniel Silva over here, and then unfortunately you have the victim of the crash here. So, crash and arrest. On Sunday the 10th of May 2020 around 9:30 or 9:39 p.m, YouTuber Corey Labari was killed when Silva crashed his 2020 McLaren 600 LT after losing control of the vehicle. He ran off the road and hit the tree and then a street sign in North Hollywood. Silva attempted to flee the scene but was stopped by a witness of the crash. So that's what makes it horrible, right? Not the fact that you got involved in an accident, the fact that you tried to flee the scene when your friend was, I'm assuming he probably looked to the right and saw his friend was probably dead on arrival, right? And probably thought you couldn't save him. But still, the fact that that's your best friend and then you decide to flee the scene is probably antithetical to the entire Hollywood LA relationships, right? They were having a blast. They were out for his birthday, painting the town red. They were going to One Oak, going to all these, great little eateries and whatever it may be around Hollywood and having a great time, really bonding. Probably told themselves, probably told, probably said how much they love each other in the toilet whilst, dabbing, sprinklings of flipping Molly and rubbing it against their gums. They were having a great moment, broing out and really connecting. And then in a moment where he probably needed the help most, his friend ditches him and tries to save himself. That is the antithesis of what it means to have friends in Hollywood, right? They're just there when it's a good time and not there when it's a bad time. It's super, super bad. Anyway, it continues and it says, but that was stopped and witnesses, I think I got to get, is it close? It is close. So that continues, but that was stopped by witnesses of the crash. Both LeBarry and Silva were transported to a local hospital where LeBarry succumbed to his injuries and was pronounced dead. LeBarry and Silva had reportedly been at a party earlier to celebrate LeBarry's 25th birthday, with sources saying that they would be drinking the whole night. Silva was arrested and booked for murder at Los Angeles Department of Police on Monday. He was held at LAPD jail in Van Nuys for a $2 million bail. Silva charged for murder and pleaded not guilty for the charge, right? LeBarry's parents, Simon LeBarry and Lisa Burton, filed a wrongful death against Silva. In July 2020, he pleaded no contest to the death of LeBarry, so he accepted a plea deal to get a lighter sentence. On August 25th, 2020, he was sentenced to 1 year in prison. So imagine, right? This guy knowingly and willingly goes into a car with his best friend. They're both liquored up. They probably got other Class A substances in their system. They get in a supercar, which is probably, far exceeds his ability to drive. And then when they crash, he flees the scene, right? So imagine, it's not, let's say they're in it together and they're both responsible in the incident, but they get into a car crash and he runs away, leaves his friend for dead. He only gets reprimanded because a witness stops him, right? This is a witness stopped him on the crash, but then he still manages to get a plea deal because guess what? He's got the monies, right? He's got the access, he's got the funds to allow him to basically circumnavigate the court process and circumnavigate the grave consequences that will come to anybody else who's just a normal, average, everyday person. But the irony of it is, a normal, average day, everyday person wouldn't leave their friend like this. They wouldn't just ditch them, right? They're not Hollywood elites. They wouldn't be worried about their career first. They'd be worried about the safety and health of their friend who they were just celebrating a good time with a few minutes ago, in a bar. So it continues here, and then he pleaded not guilty to contest. On August 20, he was sentenced to 1 year in prison with 5 years of 4-1 probation under 50 hours of community service, which is insane. Crazy light sentence. In October 8th, 2020, Silva was released from custody after serving his sentence. In January 2021, Silva's insurance company, which is the worst bit about this, right, then claimed that LeBarry caused his own death, although Silva has claimed he did not have time to review the complaint. So this guy goes again. Let's just stress how flipping scummy these people are, right? And why sometimes you have to be careful about what you kind of look at and kind of wish for to have in your own life. As amazing as it would be to have the contacts and the network that these people have, and the access is really good, right? You get to go to Boa Steakhouse and hang out with all these cool people. Your Instagram followers will probably go up exponentially. You'll have a great time hanging out with these guys, drinking, laughing, blah, 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 blah. When you're really, really in pain and you've got troubles and you're in a really bad situation, you can't count on these people. Look what happened. They got involved in the car crash. They were probably both to blame for the crash, right? The fact that they were liquored up and probably had drugs in their system. But the moment that required a friend to step up and sort of be like, hey, I'm going to look after you. I'm going to be there for you in your last dying moments. The guy ran. He ran away, right? Fled the scene with his friend still in the car, right? Gasping for his last bats of breath. Then he continued on, right? Then he only got stopped by a witness. Then he got sentenced to only 1 year in prison. One year. Only 1 year in prison because he has funds and he's Daniel Silva and people probably know him and he has clout and blah, 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 blah. And then when he gets released after that 1 year in prison, his insurance company decides to claim that LeBarry, his best friend, caused his own death, even though he wasn't driving the vehicle. How insane is that? I guess maybe they could argue he wasn't wearing a seatbelt or something on those kind of lines, but how scummy is that? And then now, as per usual, because he's probably feeling the heat and he knows the kind of the general consensus with people in general with how he kind of acted is probably quite negative, he's now decided to put out a YouTube video on his channel explaining his actions, and we'll watch a little bit of it now. And funnily enough, the likes and dislike has been disabled, so you can't see how many likes and dislikes that he has, and he's turned off the comments. Right? Classic behavior of these kind of people. Absolutely classic. So let's hear what he has to say and how he can explain the fact that he left his friends for dead and what he kind of wants to do now going forward. Because you'd think, right? Again, retribution is retribution. You can come back and have a life and be back in whatever you need to do. I'm a big believer in the audience should be the one that decides if you're cancelled or not. I don't think institutions and corporations and platforms should decide whether or not you can have a voice. The audience should decide whether or not they had enough of you or whether or not they want to hear more from you, right? So the interesting thing about this, it seems like it's more of a self-preservation thing. He wants to get in front of it and make sure he kind of is in charge of the narrative to basically save his own skin and present him to be a good person who got involved in an unfortunate incident. But ultimately, this is only for the benefit of his own career, because obviously he probably sees, the only way to get back is to kind of get out there and get in front of the story. But part of me thinks if you get involved in such an incident that results in the death of your best friend, you kind of maybe forfeit the right to have a sort of, an influencer life of some sort, right? Don't you forfeit it some way? Don't you think? Again, the audience should judge. The audience should be the ones who ultimately decide your fate. But I think if you get involved in such an incident, if you're accused, if you're convicted of manslaughter, murder, whatever it may be, molestation, you probably forfeit the right to be a public figure of some extent. You probably do. That's probably why some people would argue. That's probably why some people argue, O.J. Simpson should be allowed to tweet and do what he wants, because in a court of law, he was obviously found innocent, even though a lot of people believe he probably did it, right? But he was found innocent, so he can kind of get back and get on with his normal life. But if you've been involved in such a tragic incident, you should really you should really, of your own volition, forfeit the right to have a public life or be a public figure in any sort of way. You should kind of do the honorable thing and just say, look, this is enough, right? But let's play what he has to say anyway, regardless.
As some of you may be aware, last year I was in a car accident that resulted in the death of one of my best friends, Corey. I want to start off by saying how sorry I am for all the pain that everybody's going through. I'm sorry to Corey. I'm sorry to Corey's friends and family, and I'm really sorry to Corey's fans. I know this might not be good enough for some of you, but there's just so much that I want to say, but unfortunately I'm just limited to what I can say at this time. This will be the first time that I'm talking about the accident out of respect to the LeBerry family. But making this video has been very difficult for me, as it's almost impossible to try to find the right words for something like this. And at the moment, I'm still processing all these emotions that I'm going through and just being forced to confront the fact that this accident resulted in the death of one of my best friends. He's not only a friend of me, but he's a loving son, a brother, a person that had incredible personality, drawing people to him with his kind heart and his humor. It's hard to cope with the fact that his absence will leave a void in hundreds of thousands of people's hearts, especially to the people who had the privilege to know him personally. And
So, just, he can't... big up Gareth. Yes, big up Greg G. Appreciate that, my friend. What was I going to say? So... he's obviously explaining himself. He has to get in front of the situation. I understand, right? Fair enough. You have to kind of, he wants to explain himself, and he's trying his best to come across as sincere as he wants, as sincere as he can. But he did mention in the beginning he can't say everything that he wants to say. I'm assuming because there's still a court order. He's probably still being sued by the family, as I mentioned previously, right? There's stuff going on behind the scenes that's preventing him to say whatever he wants to say, and maybe just out of respect to the family, whatever his reason is. But part of me thinks if you can't say what you need to say now, why even get in front of the camera? Why not just wait? This is probably one of the worst times, I would imagine, to try and rectify or rewrite the narrative on such a grave incident, considering what we're going through in the world at the moment, right? People don't really, I don't really feel like people have a lot of sympathy and a lot of empathy at the moment for celebrities in any way, shape or form, because they've been spending most of their, the last 11 months, sometimes 18 months locked in indoors due to the virus going on at the moment. They're seeing all these people flying around the world and kind of not really abiding by the rules, plague graves happening all over the place, right? They're not really they don't really have the capacity to like feel any sort of empathy for these people. So if ever there was a time where you shouldn't be speaking and trying to basically fly the woe is me flag, this would probably be it. I would imagine so. But what do I know?
Always cherished every single moment that I had with him. When I moved to LA, he's one of the first people I met, and because we're so similar, we instantly bonded. It felt like we've been friends our entire lives. Corey would go out of his way to invite me places, and he was always great at making people feel welcome. I'll never forget how much that meant to me, and I'll think about him every single day for the rest of my life. After the accident, all I could do was keep thinking about how the family was doing and the pain that they just must be going through. When I was in the hospital, I was able to see the news unfold, and I watched as the media kept spreading this misinformation. A few months after the crash, the LeBerry family sent a letter to the judge asking for the second-degree murder charge to be brought down to manslaughter based on the facts that were not known at the time of the accident. And I just want to say thank you so much to the LeBerry family for recognizing that this was a tragic accident. I want to share this letter that the LeBerry family's lawyer sent to the judge, and this letter is public document. The first paragraph starts off by thanking John and Yasmin, which are the DA that were working on the case. John, thank you for taking the many calls on this case from right after the accident and listening to my thoughts and requests on the behalf of the Berry family up to and including today. Your quick response to this matter and your close examination
Come on, get to it. Let's
of
hurry up.
the family that I represent. And thank you instructed that the prosecutors and judges should take into account the victim's thoughts and opinions when determining a just and fair resolution to a criminal matter. In this email, I speak on behalf of the surviving family of Corey. I am not involved in any civil case, and I'm only here in capacity allowed by Marcy's law. When the incident first occurred, I was asked to review the facts known at the time.
Come on, hurry up, get to the point.
Los Angeles County District Attorney Office did its own evaluation and decided to file the most serious charges possible, second-degree murder. I am not here as an advocate for the prosecution of the accident. I have spent many hours with the LeBerry family, and they are a smart, kind, and an empathetic group that has to deal with an early death of their son and brother, Corey LeBerry. LAPD has been very forthright with me about the facts of the case, as well as the DA's office.
Come on, get to the point.
Our own investigation has been slightly faster than allowed by law. The witness's statement indicates the actions of Mr. Silva was not that egregious at the time of impact. The roadway was not straight, and in fact the street jogs out near the location of the accident. There was gravel placed by homeowners accidents where drivers crashed into the same tree. The drivers in these other accidents were not under the influence, and these accidents have occurred at night as well during the daylight hours.
So what's he trying to say then? That because the accident, that road was prone to accidents, that it somehow absolves him from responsibility? Because the residents of that area put gravel on the floor, I don't know, to help with the grip or to whatever it may be, just to improve the road in general, that it somehow absolves him. This is a pretty shitty apology, I have to be honest. Let's continue though.
The car that Mr. Silva drove was just purchased, and the horsepower and torque were unknown to Mr. Silva as he purchased the car within days of the accident. The facts above have had a profound impact on the hearts and minds of the LeBerry family. Most important, making their decision to request a dismissal of the second-degree murder charges in the fact that the family thought long and hard about what Corey would have wanted in this case.
So essentially what it seems like, the LeBerry family are absolute angels and saints, and because they knew how much Corey loved Daniel Silva, they wanted to spare him the pain. They're already suffering as it is, losing their son, right? They didn't want to extend and kind of, unnecessarily have Daniel Silva's family go through the same, if not the worst pain that they're going through by having him in prison for decades or whatever it may have been. So they kind of, out of the kindness of their heart, did some Christian, Catholic, religious thing, forgave him, and then asked the judge to lower the charges. That's essentially what he's basically saying. But again, this is the thing where I think he kind of lacks a little, I won't say grace, but he lacks a little bit of courtesy, a little bit of just decency, right? Because if you were forgiven by the family behind the scenes, and they sort of essentially spare your life and only put you in a position where you only spent a year in jail, you would probably use the opportunity to kind of, step away from the limelight and just work on yourself, innit? Right? You've got a whole life to live. You can kind of live your life in kind of service of your friend's memory. But this idea that he's now using this as an opportunity to go back and become a flippamajiggy or a celebrity tattoo artist, that's pretty insane. Like, legitimately insane. And again, we haven't got any update as if like, has he changed his lifestyle? Has he committed to kind of going sober? Is he getting help on something? Like, what has he done outside of this situation apart from using the forgiveness from the victim's family to kind of propel his career forward, or to kind of, get it back up and running? This is pretty yucky from what I've seen so far. Again, I've only watched this is the first time watching this. I don't have any other information. If there's anything else out there that I'm not really aware of, so be it. I'm just commenting on what I see, but this kind of seems a bit disgusting. I have to be completely honest.
Mr. Silva was a very close friend of
What's
Corey.
up, They Choose Me? What's good?
They relied upon each other during their difficult times in Los Angeles. Both have recently seen recent successes in their individual professions. Mr. Silva has been a nationally recognized tattoo artist.
Jesus Christ.
In social media circles and has an enormous following. The Berry family was aware that Mr. Silva was having a very difficult time around the date of the accident. It was only a few years before Mr. Silva's brother was killed in a car accident.
Oh my God. No wonder he turned off the comments and the like and dislike. No wonder he turned them off. No wonder. He's sitting here excusing his behavior because he suffered a loss in his own family, because he was going through his own personal issues, quote unquote mental health issues. Like, this guy is a piece of work, isn't it? The self-preservation here is just, The
Berry family believes that Corey would not want to see Mr. Silva imprisoned for what now appears to be a tragic accident. The Berry family feels the same way.
Yes, what's up, Joshua? What's up, Hardenzy Payne? I'm good, man.
Under the California law, they ask your consideration in seeking a minimal sentence, yet just sentence.
Jesus.
They believe that Mr. Silva can do more good teaching young people about their actions and consequences that occur from quick actions without much thought. On a personal note, I want to say that in the capacity as a prosecutor for almost 15 years and now a defense attorney for almost 12 years, I've rarely come across a more thoughtful and understanding family. They recognize the difference between a person placing themselves in a situation that is so reckless that a person is killed, and a horrific accident in which circumstances come together resulting in one person accidentally killing their close friend.
To be fair as well, right? As hard as I'm being on the guy, he does look pretty distraught. I'm sure he's not living the vida loca at the moment. He's probably going through his own internal hell at the moment, due to the actions of that night. He's probably still suffering, which is maybe the only sort of retribution that he's ever going to face. And, it's internal damnation on this earth is probably the worst thing, right? The fact that you have to live with that in your conscience, that you essentially caused the death of your friend and, broke the hearts of many people in his family. That's something that he's probably not going to be able to forgive himself, in the long run. But this whole apology thing, like, it just kind of stinks, man. It really does. I'm not going to lie. It kind of stinks.
Honored to represent people who look deep into their hearts before seeking vengeance, as the LeBerrys have done in this case. Thank you on the behalf of the LeBerry family in advance for your consideration of their wishes. I believe this letter is a great reflection of Corey's character and how he was raised. It's hard to put into words on how truly grateful I am for the family to send a letter like this in such a difficult time. The fact that they even showed me an ounce of empathy and were able to look past the misinformation instead of seeking vengeance shows how...
What is the misinformation? I'm really curious to know what this misinformation was. What could we possibly have gotten wrong in the details of the story? So maybe he's kind of stipulating or arguing the fact that he didn't run from the scene. Maybe he was fleeing but actually going to get help, and it looked like he was fleeing because let's imagine for just like, in terms of just a technical sense, I'd imagine it's sort of like if you refuse to put on the cuffs when the police arrest you, that essentially is kind of deemed as resisting arrest, isn't it, right? If you kind of argue back, if you don't comply. So maybe the act of just leaving the perimeter of the car crash kind of by law means you kind of flee the scene. But maybe you didn't. Maybe you was going to run across the road, I don't know, to jump into a coffee shop and try to get them to get help or go to a payphone, whatever. But because you left the scene of the crime, it's categorized as you fleeing the scene. Maybe that's what he's arguing. But I don't really see anything else he could argue against. Like, he obviously caused the crash because he was intoxicated. They're both obviously having a bit of a jolly knees up. They incorrectly got it behind the wheel of a car, even though they have the means and the access to order an Uber. And he's driving, and his inability to handle the car, which he says he bought only the couple of days earlier than that, is what caused the deaths of him and caused the death of his friend. So I don't really see what more you can add to this that would make it that would kind of dispel this idea of misinformation. That's what I'm really curious about. What is this misinformation that he speaks about? Because that's the real crux of the issue, right? They were both intoxicated. He was intoxicated and he was behind the wheel, which isn't obviously the best way to go about things. And then they got involved in an unfortunate accident where one person unfortunately lost their life. That's just it, innit? That's basically it. Even without the running away from the scene thing, that's still terrible, right? And it still probably deserves or warrants a lot more than 1 year in prison. But again, the family of the victim showed great leniency and a lot more empathy than I would have done, to be honest.
How compassionate, understanding they really are. I also want to address the accusations against me that I fled the scene after the crash.
Here we go.
Moments after the accident, two of Corey's friends saw me stumbling away from the vehicle, and they claimed that I was running away from the scene. Two homeowners also witnessed the aftermath and said that I was stumbling near the vehicle. But to be completely honest, I have no clear memory of what happened immediately after the accident. All I can say is
convenient.
I broke my hip in 3 places, I had 4 broken ribs, I had bleeding and swelling in my brain, and had a severe concussion. I know I'm not the type of person that would leave a friend in a situation like that, and if I was not disorientated, I'd have done everything in my power to help Corey. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has shown love and support for Corey and I. And I've had a long time to reflect on myself and my actions. I want to be a positive influence and an advocate for safe driving, and I hope one day I can sit down with Corey's family and tell them how sorry I truly am.
That's tough, man. That's tough. I don't know. If I'm Corey's family, I'm not able to forgive that guy. But again, they've got much bigger hearts than I have. I guess maybe, I would, like I said previously, I think in this moment that we're going through now, in the moment in the world with this virus and everyone in lockdown, the tendency to be empathetic to people that do such things to you is probably thin or probably low. But some people just have amazing hearts, isn't it? And maybe going through this moment that we're going through in time, and just like I said previously, they're already suffering the greatest of pain that any family could suffer, losing a sibling, losing a relative, especially so young with so much life to live. They're probably like, you know what, we don't want to extend this feeling to anybody else. We want them to kind of be able to just move on from this situation as best they can. I'm talking about, Daniel Silva, but Jesus, man, I'm interested to see the response to this. Again, we're not going to see anything from here because, again, the dislikes have been turned off and the comments are off. But I'm interested to see what people like Brendan Schaub and others have to say about this and how they excuse this sort of behavior, because, God damn it, it's really bad, man. It's really bad. Let's get this off the screen. What else we have to go? Oh yeah, this is quite funny, isn't it? You seen this? This is I think this is outside of a church somewhere. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's outside of a church, isn't it? It's outside of a church, I think so. Let's get the volume down a little bit. These guys go around basically asking people that are attending a church why they're refusing to wear a mask, and here's some of the replies.
Do you know why no one's wearing a mask?
Jesus heals.
Oh, right on.
What she said?
Jesus heals.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Wow.
Only those who fear death will wear things such as what you're wearing.
Do you wear a seatbelt?
Sometimes, not all the time.
Nice.
Sir.
Imagine that. Imagine you're justifying not wearing a mask because Jesus heals. Or no, it's just, again, there must be something in it though, right? There must be something in the idea of believing in a higher power that can allow something that is obviously exists, right? Because healings and stuff do happen in churches, right? You see people with really severe ailments and whatever it may be getting healed through the power of Christ or just through plain believing. There is something about faith. There is something about PMA, positive mental attitude, whatever it may be, that can kind of help people to withstand the trials and tribulations of everyday life. That sure can happen. But considering this is a novel thing that we never really encountered in our lifetime, this virus that we're all kind of suffering with in the world at the moment, to have that kind of faith, especially when you know people are legitimately passing away. Many people in the church have probably passed away, family members, people that they've known outside of it. To have that sort of faith where you can be like, you know what, no, I'm going to stick fast, I'm going to be steadfast, not wear the mask, and just believe in my higher power. That takes some big guts, some big kahunas that I don't really have, to be honest.
Are you guys from the CDC?
Oh, no.
What's that? Is that a frat?
You
You guys' eyes are all so bright. You guys all have very bright eyes. Is there any Molly?
False evidence appears real. F-E-A-R. False evidence appearing real.
What?
Or you fuck everything and you run.
Dude, you dropped an F-bomb at the Christian. Whoa, good elbow.
Oh.
Is this party illegal?
It seems like that.
That's
badass.
epic, dude.
You guys
That's pretty cool. I got kicked out of high school. I get it.
It's not BYOB, is it?
No, there's no beer nobody drinks because most Christians don't. But
Oh, for sure.
Do you know
That's funny, isn't it, right? No, most Christians don't drink. They draw the line at not drinking, but they're all right with kiddie fiddling. They're all right with not wearing a mask. Oh, you got to love it, man. You got to love the hypocrisy of religion sometimes. Brendan Ray, it's a title appointment. Oh, yeah, true, with him. So don't expect much. Yeah, true. You're very, 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 very true. They chose me, mate. I can definitely expect to hear Brendan excusing this sort of behavior very, very soon. Oh, this is another one, right? Do you guys remember this? That happened during the, I guess this was during the Black Lives Matter protest, right? This has happened during, do you remember this? So during the Black Lives Matter protests that were happening all over USA, in response to the unfortunate passing of George Floyd, protests sprung up all over the United States, people basically demanding some sort of reform in police, which kind of fell on deaf ears, right, for the most part. Even, what was that state? Where they were kind of pushing for, what was that thing called? What was that mantra? Defund the police, whatever it was, right? Was it Portland or wherever it was? There was some place that they were trying to trial getting rid of the police force all in, yeah, for the most part. But it never really went anywhere. Most of those initiatives, the black squares, all this sort of stuff, it all kind of didn't really go anywhere. The best thing about that whole incident, especially considering how tragic it was with the passing of George Floyd, is that it basically raised everyone's consciousness as to how heavy-handed the police seem to be in America for some reason, right? Because what we saw in response to Black Lives Matter, we saw people young and old, white and black, brown and yellow, whatever it may be, right, getting absolutely manhandled and sort of beaten up and really in an aggressive way in every state in America for the most part. There was a video or some sort of altercation involving police and protesters that kind of seemed a bit excessive. Again, we only had a little bit of information. We only had perspective from one view of the people that were there, blah 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 blah. But for the most part, all people could agree that police are probably being a little bit too heavy-handed. Sometimes it seemed like there was no middle ground. Either they were too heavy-handed, or they completely step back from the situation and let everyone else kind of rule the state like they did in Portland. But one incident that really kind of captivated or gripped people was this, where I guess, I don't know where this is in America, but some old man is basically, I guess, protesting, walking around, showing solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. And then for some reason, one of these riot police officers decides to push him, and because he's old and he doesn't have much balance, he slips backwards and smashes his head on the concrete. And then soon after, you see kind of blood trickling out from one of his earlobes, and you kind of hear that he's in hospital for a while. He doesn't really say much to the press. It's a very odd situation. He kind of didn't really talk to the press much. I think you only heard comments from him, from his lawyer, but it did seem like a very over-the-top way to deal with somebody that was clearly old and didn't need to be dealt with in such a manner. And then, there was, you heard the story that charges were going to be brought towards the police officers, and you were expecting some sort of consequence for these sort of actions, right? But let's just refresh ourselves and watch the extra video of what actually occurred. That's the old guy there walking up to police officers. gets pushed. Do you hear that? Do you remember hearing that? How hard and loud his skull crashes on the bottom of the flipping pavement? Like, it's absolutely excessive. So bad, man. And if there's one thing I've learned from watching UFC and loads of street fights and, perusing the fight porn subreddit, is that when people, smash their heads on the floor, that usually leads to seizures or severe brain damage. It's not the best way to, it's really one of the worst things about people fighting on the street, especially on concrete. When someone falls, the consequences are really, really grave. And everyone immediately hears that crack on the floor and knows what's going on. They all turn their heads like, oh my God, this is really bad. He's unresponsive on the floor. He's bleeding from his earlobe. Jesus Christ. Look at him. He's completely motionless on the floor. Oh my God. Oh my God. So anyway, that happened, right? And then somehow, I'm not sure how it has actually occurred, but the police officers got off. They were found innocent and all charges were dropped against them. I have no idea how this occurred. Don't ask me how, but this is courtesy of ABC News. And this is the following: assault charges against 2 Buffalo police officers in New York, seen in a video shoving a 75-year-old man to the ground during a protest last year, have been dropped, prosecutors announced on Thursday. And again, like, it's just insane how it beggars belief. And it continues. Officers Aaron Togalowski and Robert McCabe face felony assault charges over the June 4th incident in Niagara Square. In the video, protester Martin Guglioni is seen walking in the direction of the officers before they are seen pushing him. Guglioni fell flat onto his back and hit the back of his head onto the concrete, the video shows. The grand jury voted to no-bill the case, ultimately dismissing the charges. Erie County Deputy District Attorney John Flynn said during the press briefing on Thursday. Flynn defended the decision to bring charges against the officers. So the charges were brought against them, but somehow they faced they weren't convicted of their crimes. It honestly beggars belief. I don't see how you could actually. Part of the issue, right? Again, this is talking from an English dude, talking from the outside in. I'm not involved in, I don't live in America. It's not really my place to say these sort of things. But part of what really was the problem here was that if you kind of take a sort of bird's eye view from the situation, sort of pull away from it and kind of take emotion away from it, looking at the details, from what we know at the moment, George Floyd most likely died, as a consequence of a drug overdose. Now, was he in an optimal position in order to kind of prolong his life, with having a police officer, have his knee in the back of his neck and his other knee on his back, kind of, limiting his ability to breathe and limiting his movement, all that sort of malarkey? Was that possibly the best position that he could be in? Probably not, considering the amount of drugs in his system. But there's no denying that after the toxicology report was put through, he had fentanyl and other stuff in his body at the time, which is what most likely led to his death. Because if you watch the entire video, you would see that he was freaking out a bit, right? Tripping balls, going a bit nutty in the car, which is the much tragic part. The actual tragic part of the story is that when George Floyd was initially arrested by the police officers, they were talking to him pretty well and he was okay, whatever. They were kind of communicating with him in a pretty calm manner. They put him in the back of the police squad car to take him to the station, and then he started freaking out and he said he wanted to get fresh air. He couldn't handle it. They take him out, and then for some reason, because he's 6'4" big black dude, they got a bit nervous about just having him next to the side of the car because he might run or outmaneuver them. They decided to put him on the floor and then put their knees on the back of him. And then that's what initially kind of, again, is the bad image that you see of the guy kind of looking nonchalantly away as this dude, his life is being slowly kind of crushed out of him. Now, part of me thought, okay, cool, there's loads of extenuating circumstances around George Floyd's death, right? But part of me thought, if you're the police force and you want a bit of good press and you want to at least attempt to look like you give a shit and you're actually trying to reform stuff and you're taking notice of some of the bad things that have happened, you just want to make a sacrificial lamb of someone, right? Just because you want to just be like, hey, we're on top of it. So if a couple of police officers do something a bit untoward or get a bit handsy with some protesters, you just make an example of them just because, right? Just to do away with this idea that there's this blue wall of silence and no police officers are above reproach and they never do anything wrong. That's all they had to do. And this case was probably the most easy Stonewall case. They could have easily just kind of said, hey, you know what? You two were way over the top. You didn't need to do that. He was walking in your direction. He didn't look threatening. He's 75 years old. He's, you know, he's fit as a rake. These guys are clad in flipping riot gear, fit as a fiddle. There's no need for them to do what they need to do. They could have easily made a sacrificial lamb, an example of these guys, but they chose not to. And this kind of, again, furthers people's belief that, you know, the police force is ultimately pretty corrupt, isn't it? And that they're protecting their own, even to the extent where a guy that's 75 years old nearly could have lost his life. Again, what would happen if he had lost his life? Would they have been acquitted of all charges as well on top of that? That's insane. It continues. To this day, I stand by the fact that the charges should have been charged. There was a probable cause at the time to charge that offence, and I stand by that, Flynn said. I make no apologies for it. The grand jury proceedings are sealed, so we don't even know why they decided not to charge them. Absolutely insane. Flynn was unable to elaborate on what happened, but he said prosecutors put all relevant evidence before the grand jury, including multiple witnesses. I sandbagged nothing. You have my word on that. Both officers were suspended after the incident, entered not guilty pleas during the arraignment on June. The case was delayed. Get into the grand jury due to the COVID-19 restrictions that had closed the courts. Flynn said. Joseph Latano, the attorney for Togolowski, told ABC News that they were obviously very pleased by the jury's decision. We feel that they made the right decision. Obviously, it was their decision to make. Insane, innit? No charges, zero, no consequences. They pushed a 75-year-old man on the floor. He cracked his head on the pavement. Was in hospital for an untold amount of time, probably suffering from the injuries now to this day. Like, God damn it. Thomas Burton, the attorney for McCabe, told ABC News that they are focused on getting the officers back in the saddle where they belong. Oh my God. Nobody wanted to see Mr. Gugliani get hurt, but this did not happen because there were two cops sought out to hurt anyone. The bottom line is there's nothing malevolent here. Oh my days. They're saying there's nothing to see here. Please move on. Gugliani told Buffalo ABC affiliate WKB Thursday that he was shocked the charges against officers were dropped. It's a surprise, and I think the whole world is going to be surprised. You think I'm breaking the law? Arrest me, Gugliani added, referring to the officers' use of force towards them. Don't push me down. Where is that training in the manual? In a statement to ABC News, Gugliani and his lawyer, Kelly Zarconi, said that, like Flynn, they thought the incident deserved serious scrutiny. Our position remains that the government's use of unnecessary physical force against peaceful protesters is patently wrong and un-American. They said Gugliani told Good Morning America Friday he spent 2 months recovering. 2 months recovering. They didn't even cover his medical bills, no compensation, no like money on side to keep it quiet, just all charges dropped against the officers. Nothing went wrong. There was no issue there. They didn't mean to hurt him. Like, oh my God. This is absolutely wild. He spent 1 month in hospital after fracturing his skull. He said, what happened to me is just a small, tiny, minuscule piece of what happens in the black communities all the time. He told GMA, we got to do better. We have to do better than this. Both officers remain suspended pending the outcome of an internal affairs, which is obviously going to find him innocent as well. It's unclear at this point to be completed. Buffalo Police Department Captain Jeff Randall told ABC on Thursday. The Buffalo Police Union issued a statement in support of the officers following the grand jury's discussion. They're all kind of rallying around them, and absolutely insane. We've stated all along the officers McCabe and Togolowski were simply following department procedures and directives of this superiors, clear Niagara Square, despite working under extreme challenging circumstances. Gugliani was among fewer than 20 demonstrators protesting against the death of George Floyd. The protests occurred after the Buffalo curfew. Flynn noted there was a curfew. He broke the law. Oh, look at what they've been able to squeeze out of it, and he should not have been shoved. He should have been arrested peacefully. Jesus Christ, man. Absolutely insane how they got away with that. Like, now, again, I'm not really a fan of the ACAB, right? The all cops are bastard mantra. But sometimes you wonder, man, like, these systems are just set up to kind of essentially permit these people that wear these uniforms to do just about whatever they want to you with no real recourse, unless you have the money and the connections to get you out of trouble. Really, you're basically FUCKED, isn't it? You really are. There's no real getting around it, man. There's no real getting around it. Absolutely keenest to see. But again, happy the guy's okay. And he's kind of recovering after spending a month in flipping hospital recovering from his injuries. Absolutely shocking, that. Absolutely shocking. But hey, what can you do? What can you do? Let's get rid of that on the screen. Oh, yeah, then we got this. You seen this one? This is pretty freaky. You know, the trashiest of the trashiest fighting that you may see from some of the ladies. You know, horrible hair dyes, crazy outfits, loads of racial slurs being directed at certain people. So let's have a peruse.
Who are they gonna believe? The white girl, the fucking Mexicans, exactly. Who the fuck are they gonna believe? Some stupid fat fucking Mexican bitch? No.
Jesus Christ.
Hell no, I'm white, baby girl. I'm white. I'm fucking hot, and you're not. You're a fucking
Hot. That's a bit of an understatement, no? It's a bit of an exaggeration there, right? That's a little bit of a that's a little bit of a distortion of the truth. Hot, I wouldn't really describe as hot, you know. A lot of things, maybe your underparts, her private parts are maybe hot for some untold reasons, but I wouldn't describe her physically as the hottest lady in the world, right? She's no Pamela Anderson, let's just say that, right? She's no Bella Thorne, right? She's no Kendall Jenner. Oh Jesus, look at this lady.
stupid ass bitch. Yeah, that's why you're flinching, stupid bitch.
Don't even. Hold it. No, hold it. Don't.
I don't even know why they're arguing, but it looks funny. Guess they crashed the car somewhere. Oh, crashed the car. Who do you think has the worst drivers? American women or British women? Because, you know, usually we all know women are the worst drivers, right? We all know that. Who do you think is the worst? Something tells me American, just because of the size of the cars, the size of the roads. It just seems like there's a lot more accidents occur, especially when you consider how young they start driving, especially if you live in a state where there's not great public transport. You start driving from 16, sometimes 18 years of age. It's a necessity for you to get around. You're definitely going to get yourself involved in a few skirmishes and crashes. Especially if I imagine if you're driving automatic, right? You're not driving a stick shift or anything. There's probably more reason for you to get involved in those crashes because those cars are essentially go-karts, right? It's easy to drive an automatic car. It doesn't really require much spatial awareness. It doesn't require much understanding of, you know, where you are in proximity with other cars and traffic and all that malarkey. I don't know. That's what I think.
Our friends, we called you guys haven't came, and now the girl's getting aggressive.
Yeah, you wish I was getting.
So she crashed the car into a reservation where loads of Mexicans bound to live, and instead of apologizing and, you know, profusely and offering any kind of support that you can for the families that have been affected, she gets out and starts insulting them and being racist. You gotta love it, innit? You gotta love it.
Arrested, I'm not though, baby girl. I'm not. Bet.
Because I'm white.
Okay.
What the
You
hell?
fucking think.
What are you then?
What's the beaner insult as well for Mexicans? Is that because of the burritos and stuff? I never understood the beaner thing. What, because they do, they're known to, maybe when they come into a country, they do manual labor jobs that require them to pick beans. What's the whole beaner thing? It's such a weird insult, and I guess it's the same level of insult as like calling a white person cracker, right? I guess, because what, they look like the same color, or because they eat them? Like, what's the actual thing about there? Or maybe no, I think cracker comes from the cracking of the whip, right? From the slave era, from what I remember. The etymology of that word comes from that, right? It was a way of the kind of slaves kind of insulting their slave masters who were whipping them on the fields or whatever it may be. But I wonder what the beaner insult comes from. It's a very interesting insult, isn't it? Beaner.
Fucking, what are you? You're still a fucking Mexican. You're still Mexican. You're fucking stupid. That's what you are.
What? And where's that girl on the floor? Do you have a girl? I don't. Jesus Christ, that one, the pink hair's got an absolute wagon on her, innit? An absolute dump truck. Oh. They eat beans in Mexico. Is that why they call them beaners? That's such a low grade insult, isn't it? It's like calling somebody four eyes. It's like, okay, cool, I wear glasses, four eyes. Great. It's like, I know. After all that woofing, she probably got beaten up anyway. her friend's got an absolute wagon on her, isn't it? Or am I just going a bit crazy? Isn't that a bit of a wagon? Or is that just Cheerios and Hot Pockets? Okay, and then she eventually got arrested as well, innit? What an epic result for an absolutely donut of a person, innit? These people are absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Or we got, this is a bit of a sad one. This is Bam Margera crying, I guess, because he's kind of falling off the wagon. He's had a bit of a hard time, innit? I think I'm not going to watch this one. I don't want to get bummed out. Let's move on with that one. Oh, this is a great one. This is awesome. So this was shared on the socials the last couple of days. It's so good, so good. Again, you know, somewhere in England, I guess for the most part, most of you are probably aware that what's I gonna say? That for, you know, smoking marijuana in the UK isn't permitted. It's not legal. People do it obviously still, but you can't just be out in the open smoking a joint. It's just, you know, especially if around certain parts of the UK, especially if you're from a minority background, the police are looking for any excuse to arrest you. If they smell that smell anywhere around you, they're gonna pull up. They're gonna, you know, rat you up, fine you, wherever maybe you spend a night in jail. It's just unnecessary. So sometimes people get around it by, you know, jumping in someone's car, driving to a car park somewhere and just kind of smoking out, or going to someone's house, whatever you may be doing, just doing what you can. But this is quite a common scene that you'd find in loads of inner cities all across the UK. Guys just sitting in their cars smoking, especially if they live at home with their parents and not allowed to smoke indoors. You know, it's just what it is. But unfortunately, this guy, just the unfortunate circumstance, usually, again, it's a residential area. It's rarely you get police just like wandering into a residential area with parked cars and, you know, flats and shit. They usually just kind of, you know, keep in main city centers and only come to your area when there's actual crime occurring. But this guy just seemed to be unlucky in this regard, and the police pulled up on him as he was kind of sparking up a joint, and look what transpired after the fact. Hilarious.
Smoking cannabis, yeah? No. Just turn it off for now, mate. I don't want you driving off. I don't want you driving off. Stop!
The start of the video is better because they said, "Are you smoking cannabis?" Like, nah. What did you say? I'm just getting some fresh air or something. I forgot what it was, but so I think the police officers have pretty good senses in it of how people are gonna react. I think he knew straight away this guy wasn't gonna just peacefully come out of the car and, you know, decide to offer up some be of service to questions. He was obviously going to be a bit of a hassle, so he knew it, and he immediately asked him to turn off the ignition, and he just sped off. And then what transpires after is probably the most funny part of the story, right? Because usually you would imagine if you're going to decide to run away from the police and decide to, you know, engage in some sort of chase, you've got a plan of where you want to go, right? You've got a plan of what you want to do. You imagine there's some sort of plan that you're doing, and you'd also imagine the crime is so grave that you don't want to be caught. But this is so odd because it seems like he's just sparking up a joint. He might have a couple grams on him or something. It's not like, I don't know, unless he's got like a whole pack in his boot that he was afraid of maybe giving up. But just watch what happens after. Oh wow, you got the keys. Oh no. Honestly, right, I don't understand how somebody in that position of the dude, how he was able to give up his best advantage of getting away. The dude was obviously on foot or on a motorbike. If he was able to kind of get his car keys, he probably could have sped off and found some place to hide. But he got in a position where he probably as well, I'd imagine, probably didn't want to cause the officer much damage and harm because he's screaming and crying like a little baby. But god damn it. Officer got the keys and look what happens next.
Help! He's just drove off Asian male in a vehicle.
Hey,
he's running away now. Running off. Stay there now! Help! He's running off! Stay there now! Asian male, IC4, wearing blue jogging bottoms, grey
And again, they haven't run that much, right? They've probably run, I'm going to say, for the total of maybe 30, 40 seconds. And he's already out of breath. He starts walking already, right?
New Hope Road, going towards New Hope Road. Oh, he just tried to run me over.
Look, he's walking.
Mate, stop what you're doing now. You've assaulted an officer. Come down the hill. He's going to Montague Road, I repeat. Montague Road.
This is the worst police chase I've ever seen in my entire life. Oh my
He just tries to run me over. Right, I've got it all on body cam.
God almighty, man. Absolutely shocking. Shocking criminal. Possibly the worst I've seen in my entire life. And again, like, what could he have possibly be wanting to risk his freedom and causing the unfortunate passing of a flipping, like, imagine if he ended up killing a police officer because of a couple of joints. And police officers as well, like, imagine how, surely as a police officer you have to kind of fight to live another day, or live to fight another day, right? You could probably get your other colleagues involved. He's, driving a distinctive car. He's a distinctive looking gentleman. He could have easily just kind of let him go and kind of called the cops, but like, this whole like hero shit is just insane, man. You could have got swept underneath the car and just unfortunately the amount of nonsense in this clip is just absolutely insane. But the hilarious part is that he ran and then he went into a dead end, came back again, hit the police officer, pretty shit one time, bang, didn't really do much to him, knocked him off his feet a bit, then decided to run again for 30 seconds, got out of breath because he's obviously been smoking all night, and then got calmly arrested by his other colleagues that rocked up, man. Absolutely insane story, man. Absolutely insane. Oh, what a guy. What a guy. What else we got here? Oh, this is news from the New York Times. Facebook, obviously, no surprise here, is said to be building a product to compete with Clubhouse. I'm not too sure if many of you guys have been using Clubhouse at the moment. I'm not sure. I've kind of browsed it and hung around in certain rooms and listened in here and there, but I haven't necessarily lent my voice to anything. Again, like I said in previous shows, I'm still a big believer that it's a bit overhyped and it's only kind of become a thing because we're all indoors and we can't really go and live our quasi-normal lives, and the need to connect and chat and have some sort of interaction with human beings is probably what's driving people to go on the app. I still think once life returns back to normal, the usage and engagement on the app will sort of plummet, really, in my opinion. But who knows, maybe it's a whole new language that they've created with this sort of audio snippet thing. Twitter are doing it now at the moment too. They've got a little trial happening now. I think it's called Spaces, which is a similar sort of way of using Clubhouse, where you sort of record these little short things. There's also, who else is doing it? Clubhouse is doing, Twitter has one, obviously Facebook is doing it now, and the Facebook is no surprise, right? Mark Zuckerberg is known to be a bit of a callous, cold-hearted guy when it comes to this sort of stuff. Like, he just will copy every single feature, every single product that another company is doing that's kind of successful within the social media lane. If you can't acquire it, he's just going to copy it point blank, and that's what they're eventually doing. And if you think about it, considering the amount of people, especially older folk, who are conversing on there about politics, about societal things, and just conspiracy theories, and regardless, what people use on social media, whatever it is. But Facebook is a particular one where people seem to spend an absorbent amount of time. It only makes sense in order to kind of keep them on the platform longer, because that's essentially what these things are for. You want to just make sure people stay on your app for longer periods of the time. And what is a longer period of time than having people just speak, right? So if that's the case, it makes sense them doing it, because it's going to completely win. It's going to completely crush now and sort of obsessed with that app. That might lend them some long-term, what would you call long-term, how would you say it? People might just stay on it because that's the first one, right? That's what I'm basically kind of saying. But I'm interested to see how the Facebook develops it. But anyway, it's on New York Times. Facebook is said to be building a product to compete with Clubhouse. It says the following: San Francisco, Facebook is building an audio chat product that is similar to the popular young app Clubhouse, according to two people with knowledge of the matter. Clubhouse, a social networking app, has gained buzz for letting people gather in audio chat rooms to talk about various topics. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook's chief executive, has been interested in audio communication forms and said the people with knowledge of the matter, and he appeared in Clubhouse app on Sunday to chat about augmented reality and virtual reality. That's super funny, right? That's actually true. He actually put and set up a he set up a profile and kind of was chatting in the rooms, and obviously now we know he was doing it for market research purposes, and now look at them, they're building one anyway behind the scenes. It continues, Facebook executives have ordered employees to create a similar product, said the people who were not authorized to speak, and they ordered them to do it. The product is at its early stages of development, they said, and the product code name is called Change. It could change, sorry. It says, the quote here, we've been connecting people through audio and video technologies for many years and are always exploring new ways to improve the product, Emil Haskell, a Facebook spokeswoman, said. A representative of Clubhouse declined to comment. Facebook has a history of breaking into technologies and chasing different mediums that have attracted users, especially the audiences are young. Mr. Zuckerberg brought photo sharing with Instagram's photo sharing inside Instagram, messaging app WhatsApp, and a virtual reality company Oculus when they were all small startups. The interesting part of it is that I think all three of those startups that Facebook bought, their founders, original ones, left because they couldn't deal with working with Mark Zuckerberg and the executives that work there. Supposedly the environment at Facebook is a bit toxic, according to what Jason kind of said on the Lex Friedman podcast. So it'll be interesting to see how a company that isn't the most doesn't have the most goodwill in terms of society. People kind of see Facebook as like a necessary evil, doesn't really have the best reputation, blah, 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 blah. It's interesting to see how people sort of adopt and use and kind of respond to this Clubhouse thing, especially if it turns out to be a direct copy of it, which it end up being, in it, because that's what they always do in general anyway, innit? Facebook see a product and see it works and just copy it completely. Facebook is known in Silicon Valley for being willing to clone competitors. Instagram in 2016 copied one of the marquee features of viral Snapchat stories, which allow users to share the ephemeral videos and photos. Last year, Instagram debuted Reels, a TikTok-like video product. When the teleconferencing service Zoom became popular last year, Facebook quickly created Rooms and group chat services. They are disgusting and they're awful. And this year, Facebook has been working on a competing product to Substack, the popular newsletter service. Look at them; they're unashamed in their flagrant copying of other people's products and services. Facebook has dabbled in experimental app development through its new product experimentation team, the team that's worked with podcast apps, travel apps, and music apps, among others. Clubhouse, which was founded last year by the entrepreneurs Paul Davidson and Rohan Steff, has gained traction around Silicon Valley as private, invite-only iPhone app. The app is in beta, meaning it's still in testing stages before the wide release. After signing up for Clubhouse, users can create rooms dedicated to different topics instead of video or text or Clubhouse preferred medium. It's voice chat. Room sizes vary from the intimate to the thousands of people listening to participants. At times, it works like a hybrid of a CB radio and a 1980s party line. Clubhouse has flourished in a pandemic as people have searched for ways to connect with while remaining isolated from others. The app sits atop the Apple rankings in countries like Germany, Italy, Spain, and Turkey. At recent internal meeting, Mr. Davidson and Mr. Steff said Clubhouse had 2 million weekly users, which is flipping insane considering people are sitting there talking. Dozens of celebrities from Drake, Tiffany Haddish, and Bryan and co-founder have appeared on the app, joining different discussions and using the service to promote their projects. Investors have noticed Clubhouse has raised $100 million in January and a $1 billion valuation, according to PitchBook. It was valued last year at $100 million. Its investors include the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz and more than 180 others, the company has last said. Others are trying to compete with Clubhouse. Twitter is testing out its product called Spaces that offers a similar audio chat function. International interest in Clubhouse also proliferated on Monday. The app was blocked in China after people were joined these from Taiwan, Hong Kong, and elsewhere to share thoughts on the topics ranging from political mandate. Tech titans have also started occasionally appearing on Clubhouse. Last month, Elon Musk and the Wall Street just agreed to be interviewed by Clubhouse by 2 Silicon Valley technologists. Blah, 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 blah. But yeah, let's see what happens, man. I'm interested to see how they kind of copy it going forward. Let's see how that happens. Okay. Of course, the reminder, if you're joining in for the first time, make sure you're smashing that like and hitting subscribe. That would be greatly appreciated. And of course, any other support is greatly appreciated too. Thank you for joining Mans Thank you for joining Merge. Okay, what else do we have here? What else do we have here? Okay, other news. Let's move on. What's up with the chat saying? So don't expect much crazy. El Mackie, anyone talking? I'm not too sure if anyone's talking. I know I'm talking, brother. I know I'm talking. That's what actually matters. So, what did El Mackie said? You can't Trump to Trump. Well, guess what? Look at this. Interesting. I was thinking of this, right? This is an article from The Hill. It says Twitter says Trump's ban is permanent even if he runs in 2024. Now, the reason why I brought this up is because it's an interesting development, because obviously now we've learned, the second impeachment wasn't successful from a Democratic point of view. Donald Trump was acquitted of all charges concerning the insurrection that occurred at the Capitol building a few weeks ago. And I guess a lot of people were hoping, I'm guessing if you're on the left, for him to get convicted, which would prevent him from running for office in 2024. But as soon as he was acquitted of all charges, he put out a press release that was read out on the news. And I remember someone saying and it says something along the lines of, I have a lot of great news to share with you in good time. Please be patient and thank you for your support, which kind of leads credence to the idea that most probably he's either going to run or he's going to set up some media company. We've got whatever rumors you believe out there, right? But the interesting part of it I'm thinking is that if he does run again, it's pretty egregious and probably without merit, and something that will probably could be argued. Like, how can a former president have no access to social media, number one, still to this day, right? Even regardless of what you think of the dude, he's got no access to social media as a former president, which is absolutely insane. And also, if he runs, Twitter's still not willing to reinstate his account, which is absolutely insane, considering the fact that he will, if he runs and wins, he'll be the leader of the free world, right? He'll be a leader and the president of America once again. Like, it's absolutely insane that they can do that. And they can kind of essentially limit and silence his voice because they feel like he's a danger to wider society. Now, some would argue that in a court of law, quasi court of law, he got found innocent of all charges, which was quasi it is, but you know what I mean. There were things probably in his favor that probably helped. The Republicans are never going to vote against him to a large majority. But should that be allowed? Should social media platforms be allowed to silence politicians, especially ones that are running for office and successfully win the election? Is that allowed? Like, is that kind of against should that kind of be, not even against, should that be part of some sort of constitution, I guess, written into law, that if you're a president or if you're a high-ranking official, that you are required by law, or no, it's required by law that you have an account, so in order for you to communicate with your constituents directly. Because what does this mean? Does this mean that the only way Trump can speak to people would be to go on these mainstream platforms, which haven't been that forgiving to him with, some understandable reasons? Or should he go on his own platforms only to speak? And again, that kind of doesn't necessarily give you hope in terms of being, journalistic integrity, right? If he says stuff on his own platform, it's not exactly as if they're gonna grill him. And if you're a public official, you need to be held accountable for your actions and, held to task with some of the decisions that you make. So if anything, social media and these other platforms are the best way to do so. So without that, it kind of feels a bit strange that they would take this stance, especially considering that now he's been acquitted of all charges. It just seems a bit odd. But anyway, this is the article. It says, this is from The Hill. Twitter says Trump's ban is permanent even if he runs in 2024. It says, former President Donald Trump Twitter ban is permanent even if he runs for presidency again in 2024. A top official has said on Wednesday during a CNBC Squawk Box. Twitter chief financial officer Ned Seeger was asked if the platform would restore Trump's account even if he ran again and was elected president. He said, the way our policies work, they always start with that sort of sentence, isn't it? The way our policies work, the way my bank account is set up, the way our policies work, when you're removed from the platform, you're removed from the platform, whether you're a commentator or you're a CFO, you're a former, current or public officer. So basically when you're removed, you're removed. Our policies are designed to make sure that people are not inciting violence, and if anybody does that, we would have to remove them from the service, and our policies don't allow people to come back. But if it's proven in a court of law that you haven't, again, this is what gets a bit weird about the situation. If a court of law finds you innocent, shouldn't your account get reinstated? Imagine if you got cancelled by society for something very egregious concerning women, and you're found in a court of law to be innocent. Does that mean you shouldn't be allowed to have a voice again on, in the public square, which is what these social media platforms are? I think it's a bit strange, right? It doesn't make any sense, really. Says, our policies are designed to make sure that people are not inciting violence. And if anybody did that, we would have to remove them from the service, and our policies don't allow people to come back. So no, said Scott Box, Rebecca Quick Press. He said he was removed when he was president, and there'd be no difference to anybody who was a public official once they've been removed from the service, Siegel responded. Again, man, I don't think that's right. Honestly, don't think that's right personally. And I think it's a bit of I won't say it's a slippery slope, but it's a bad precedent to set, because again, like I said, he was found innocent in a court of law. He didn't, according to his contemporaries and according to people, that were in that building, they basically come to the conclusion that he didn't incite the riot, even though he probably did. If we, look at the video footage, look at what he was saying, look at the rhetoric prior, look at what Donald Trump Jr. was saying, he probably played some part in the fact that, he obviously didn't tell these guys to go and climb the walls and storm the building and sit inside Nancy Pelosi's office and, whatever it may be. He didn't direct them exactly, but his actions did lead to it. There's no denying it. But he was found innocent. He was acquitted of all charges. He should be reinstated, you think? Trump was banned from Twitter last month following the deadly Jan 26 riots that interrupted Congress certification of President Donald Trump's electoral win. President Biden. Just before the ban, Trump tweeted about the election and said he would not attend Biden's inauguration, which he didn't. Twitter said that in the broader context, the tweets violated the company's glorification of violence policy. What? The platform later banned Team Trump, Trump's official campaign account, and his digital director, Gabby Corby, for violating the platform's ban evasion policy after they tried to give the former president a chance to speak on Twitter following his removal. Okay, so they banned his team's account because he tried to tweet through there. Trump was also attempted to tweet from the POTUS account, but those tweets were quickly deleted. So on the back, imagine how insane this is, right? They banned him, took away his possibility to speak. He couldn't speak through his own official channel because they have some sort of, glorification of violating the ban evasion policy, right? Then he tries to tweet through the official account of the Prime Minister of the United States, and his posts get deleted from the back. I didn't even know they could do that in the back, and they can delete your tweets without you even seeing. Insane. So which obviously lends credence to the idea that you can get shadow banned in these places. The account wasn't banned because it's a government account and was later transferred to Biden administration. Trump has been banned from social media platforms in the wake of the riots that led to 5 deaths, including the Capitol Police officer. The former president has later impeached for inciting the riot, and the Senate began the impeachment trial on Tuesday. However, it's highly likely that Trump will be acquitted, as Democrat will need 17 GOP senators to vote to convict him. It's absolutely insane, isn't it? It was a joke. Yeah, they didn't violate the terms. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. Like, again, I'm no fan of the guy. He's obviously probably not he's probably not a great leader to have when you're going through what you're going through at the moment, I think, in the States. I think that needs to be said. When you're suffering from when you go through this global pandemic that we're going through at the moment, you probably need somebody that with a cooler head, somebody that's not so emotional, somebody that doesn't kind of fly off the seat of their pants, somebody that's not as vindictive as he is and whatever it may be, and somebody who kind of isn't as widely disliked. I think that was a major issue that he had, because people generally just didn't like the dude, especially in the mainstream media. He was constantly on the defensive, which didn't necessarily give him time and opportunity to kind of be proactive and do good work. He was always trying to defend himself, and the one thing about Trump is that he's going to look after his image. He's going to make sure he can kind of get in front of the narrative. He's going to make sure he paints himself in a good light, and it's sometimes to the detriment of the entire country, right? He doesn't really give a shit about anybody else apart from himself in that regard. But he's probably not the best guy to have in place at the moment, but it still seems odd to me that a former president has no access to social media for a crime that they were later acquitted for. It just seems very, very odd and sets a pretty bad precedent, I would imagine, going forward. But again, I'm not in the States. I'm in England. It's none of my business. What do I know? What do I know? And yeah, it's true, innit? From Jones, innit? How bad do you want to tweet? You know what's funny as well, right? The interesting part about Trump, part of me thinks the reason why he threw all those protesters under the bus, because he wanted to get his account back. I think he must have received an email or a call from Jack or somebody from upper management at Twitter who basically said, look, this guy has to stop tweeting. He can't put out these inflammatory statements. It's going, people are going crazy. It's going to lead to deaths, which it eventually did. Some people, seemed like passed away through natural circumstances, whatever it may be. But the funny thing is, right, I feel like he only apologized or threw them under the bus, not apologized, kind of, what's that word called? Disavowed the protest and kind of stepped away from them and didn't really show solidarity with the protesters because he wanted to get his account back. That's how badly he wanted to tweet. He wanted to tweet so badly he was willing to apologize for something that he probably wouldn't have apologized for in normal times. That is absolutely insane. They're after me if you're just in a way of them. But yeah, what can you do, man? What can you do? Let's move on from that. What else we got here? What's this about? What is this about? What is this for? Is it all things comedy? Yeah, this is a... So, yeah, let's talk about this clip here. So, this is courtesy of the Bill and Bert podcast. Of course, I think most of you are familiar with these two individuals. Bill Burr, probably one of the best stand-up comedians now in the world, I'd imagine. Maybe him and Dave Chappelle are 1 and 2. My favorites are probably him, Dave Chappelle, Sebastian Maniscalco, and Norm Macdonald. They're probably my top 4, and maybe I'd say 5 that would sneak in there would be like a Mark Normand, right? They're probably my favorites out there at the moment. But Bill and Bert Kreischer, who's another stand-up comedian, have this really great podcast where the whole dynamic of it is really good because you wouldn't really expect them to be friends, right? Bill's kind of a feisty, prickly guy who kind of is never happy about anything, and Bert is basically a happy-go-lucky, functional alcoholic, bro dad who kind of, is known for doing some really great marketing skits and whatever it may be. But in recent years, I've kind of felt as if like Bert started to get a little bit annoying, right? He started to become a little bit annoying. The laughs are getting a little bit over excessive. His kind of, disbelief at how anybody can lose weight gets annoying. Justifying his alcohol consumption gets a little bit tedious. Putting like family business out there in order for laughs and giggles on the stage, it just kind of rubs me up the wrong way a little bit, right? So that's why I purposely stopped listening to his podcast. You kind of have to take him in small doses, which is why I find him better to enjoy on the Bill and Bert podcast and also the Two Bears One Cave. I feel like those two people, in Tom Segura and Bill Burr, are great balances and great kind of little buffers in order for these like kind of manic episodes. But part of the reason why I've kind of been again put off by him a little bit as well was kind of his response to the whole Chris D'Elia stuff. So Chris D'Elia, another stand-up comedian within the LA comedy scene, as you guys know, last year, or 2019 actually, 2019, I don't know, whenever it was accused of some sexual assault charges from people. Then it was assumed or alleged that he was involved in some underage stuff, which kind of then later got dismissed. But he was kind of, had some serious allegations on top of his head, which resulted in him basically getting cancelled. He got dropped by his agent, removed from a movie. His Netflix show with Bryan Callen got terminated. Bryan Callen ended up getting removed and cancelled too due to his own allegations. And it seemed like for the most part the entire LA comedy scene, which kind of seemed a little bit close from the outside looking in, it did seem like a close-knit group, and it seemed like they all kind of appeared in each other's podcasts. They all helped each other's numbers get up. They kind of created this whole little scene around them, the Comedy Store, blah 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 blah. And Chris D'Elia was one of the main proponents of that scene, one of the biggest stars there, right? Known as being kind of a person that kind of garnered a lot of attention, sold a lot of tickets, got a lot of views on YouTube, blah, blah, blah. And they all kind of used him in certain, in loose term to kind of boost their platforms, what they're doing. And the moment he got in a bit of trouble, it seemed like nobody really stood up for him or kind of backed him. Again, I understand it's difficult to do so. These guys have families. Bert's got 2 teenage daughters. He's got a wife. He lives in LA with a nice house and stuff. Like, he's just about got involved in the industry. He's got Netflix special. I get it. But just the lack of kind of support, and especially outwardly on public in general, kind of really rubbed me up the wrong way. And then when Bert went on Vlad TV of all places, because he's a bit of a attention whore and he wants as much press as he can in the things that he's doing, he then kind of dismissively said he hadn't spoken to Chris D'Elia. He doesn't really know. He kind of insinuated he didn't really know him that well, and just essentially kind of threw him under the bus a little bit. And it really kind of rubbed me up the wrong way. And I'd imagine if you're Chris D'Elia, knowing how long, they've known each other for a while. I'm going to say maybe close to 10 years. Again, only from outside looking in, I can imagine. You'd kind of be a bit annoyed by it. And then he obviously said on Vlad TV, and I'd imagine behind the scenes, Chris Lear wasn't too happy. And then he kind of explained himself here in the podcast, sort of kind of apologizing for what he said. So let's hear what he has to say regarding it. But again, I wasn't necessarily a big fan of what he said, but let's see what he said in terms of how he felt when he replied to the question of, have you spoken to Chris D'Elia? What do you think about the issue? And he sort of kind of tried to run away from it and make it seem like they weren't that good friends. So let's see what he has to say in his own words.
It's interesting that I'll tell you, Bill, very candidly, and I'll tell you off air who it was. But I said something about a comic in an interview. I just was caught off guard, and I wasn't ready to answer it. And I didn't know.
He wasn't caught off guard. Let's kind of be honest, right? What else are they going to ask him about? Especially going on Vlad TV, it's a bit of a trash, piece of trash platform anyway. He's always trying to court controversy. The most likely subjects they're going to bring up is, joke stealing, maybe the stuff he had to do with, the altercations he had with Jay Moore back in the day, Kevin Hart that you kind of rags on, Mickey Mantle, Gene, Sober October. There's not many subjects that Vlad TV is going to be that familiar with when it comes to Bert Kreischer. So one of them you would imagine would be cancel culture. And especially at the time that he was recording the interview with Vlad, it was still fresh off the heels of the whole Bryan Callen stuff. And again, Bryan Callen and Chris D'Elia were big people in that scene at that time. For him to suggest it came out of the blue was a bit, again, he's kind of trying to absolve himself of blame, I would imagine. But let's continue.
Where I should say, and I reached out to the comic and was like, hey man, I'm sorry that I piled on to that. I was like, I wasn't prepared to answer a question about it, and it caught me off guard. And man, when everyone like
you should have gone publicly apologized.
Exactly.
I don't know. There's so much fucking everything is so
I know, I get it
right now, where you just go like, I don't know anything, so
there's nothing complicated about it. Again, it's just cowardice. That's the problem I said prior to the whole Daniel Silva issue. Again, it's not as serious, but that Daniel Silva incident with the car crash, is a great representation of just how poisonous and horrible the LA comedy scene is in general, right? You have, again, the charges against Chris are not some, he didn't get caught, stealing a piece of steak from flopping Walgreens or whatever it may be, right? Those are serious allegations against him. But when you just kind of, took a bit of a breath and did what's that Drake say? Whenever something scandal happens, it takes 48 hours in order to respond. He gives it 48 hours before he decides he's going to respond or whatever it may be. If you just took a breath and just kind of analyze all the accounts of people that were coming after him, once you kind of were able to kind of dismiss all the other allegations of him kind of dealing with underage girls, what you kind of were left with was the worst crime that he was obviously, maybe guilty of, was maybe cheating on his partner who at the time was pregnant, and also the allegation where he tried to hook up with, he basically hit up a girl who was underage at the time. She said what her age was. He kind of left, and then when she turned of age, he then got back in the DMs again, right? That's the only thing you kind of get him at for. But on paper, he didn't do nothing illegal. He thought the girl was of age. She wasn't. Then when she was of age, he came back. Creepy. No, would I want to bring him around my sisters? Probably not. But it's not enough for his friends to throw him under the bus, especially when you consider, most likely, especially when you listen to people like Joey Diaz, he's always said, Chris Lee was always known as a ladies' man. He'd always come through at a comedy store with 2 to 3 or 4 or a harem full of different ladies of, varying different ages. And people wouldn't really ask any questions. They just thought, yeah, this is Chris's lifestyle. It is what it is. And no one really questioned it. No one had any really explanation. No one really was perturbed by it or wanted to speak out. But they knew who he was. They knew he was a bit of a playboy. They knew that he probably went on the road in order to kind of, get his, piece wet. It is what it is. And at the time when his actual friends who know him and know the strength of his character, again, you don't know everything that someone does. You could just imagine the support of just, again, this the most egregious part about it is if you understand, right? What's his name? When Harvey Weinstein was getting accused of what he was getting accused of, and his crimes were very detailed, very long, had a lot of history of being a complete creep to, loads of different people in industry, abused, actresses from, decades on, had a trail full of victims that he left behind him. But when they asked that, who's the director, the legendary director, I forgot his name. Oh, it doesn't matter, right? But when they asked this legendary director about comment regarding it, the issues or the allegations against him, he's kind of quasi stood up for Harvey Weinstein and basically said, look, he's done great by me. He's kind of greenlit all my movies. He's given me a budget. He's kind of approved the budget, been a support person, a support system that I could kind of lean on. So the guy that I know would never do that, but I'm just going to kind of take time to take stock and I need time to reflect on what's going on, and I'll give my answer later. But the initial response was, I'm going to stand by my friend, but I'm still going to take some time in order to kind of analyze these allegations because they're obviously very serious. And again, this is Harvey Weinstein. You could have easily just been like, no one would have blamed him if he just would have dismissed his relationship and threw him under the bus completely. But he still stood by him. So if someone could do that for Harvey when Harvey Weinstein's allegations and eventually he got obviously charged with all of those crimes and he's still in prison now at the moment, if someone could stand by him, why couldn't you stand by Chris with something that was, demonstrably less of a crime than what Harvey Weinstein could ever have done? Especially if you know the character of the person. That's what really rubbed me the wrong way. And it kind of showed the hypocrisy of that scene. It showed that, again, they're only your friends when you're up. When you're down, they kind of all abandon you for the most part, especially if you're a star. It's sort of dwindling in some way, shape or form. It's a really kind of sad way that this kind of whole thing burnt out. But again, maybe it's for the better, right? It's for the best. Since then, Joe Rogan got a Spotify deal, moved to Texas. California essentially got, crippled by Gavin Newsom. The possibility to go on stage was basically scuppered with the virus. It kind of basically led to other people kind of searching for other methods to kind of get their voice out there. So that dependency on the kind of LA comedy scene ecosystem sort of dwindled. So maybe it's for the best in general, right? This whole kind of incestuous clicky thing, it was kind of shown up to be nothing more than just a good time group. And then when it comes down again, when you need your help, when you need their help, they're not really there for you. So maybe it was a good thing in general, but at the time it did want to rub me up the wrong way. Let's continue and let's end this quickly.
I should resign with I don't know anything.
That's the thing. Well, that's my thing about all of this shit. It's just like, okay, if what you're saying is true, that's terrible. But it's just like, I wasn't there. You weren't there. How can you speak about this with such confidence?
It's the truth, man.
You know what I mean? Because, you want to make...
But Bert's when I spoke about it, much confidence.
Something of this level of importance, you want to make sure you get it right, because if you get it wrong either way, the level of damage that you're going to do, like if you are wrong and then somebody who didn't do anything, suffers it, and then you find out it's bullshit, now you're fucking over everybody with real stories.
Yeah.
Right? Oh. And vice versa. If you let somebody go, who actually did something, then that's kind of giving license to other abusers and shit. But it's just, so my thing is, I don't want to fuck that up. Yeah. So if I wasn't there and I have no information about it, I don't say anything. Exactly. And that was the thing that just I found so fucking astounding.
Exactly.
Especially from people that are in the public eye that understand how the way they what is it, like the Daily Mail? They like doing that. They did that to me one time. Bill Burr says something racist, and they go like this. They put the quotes so you can't sue them, but people just read that. They took a clip of my podcast, and I was about ready to go to Australia, and I was.
But that's basically the crux of it. But yeah, again, I think there is a lot to be said. I think even was it good comment there, Naruto. Said friendship is a ship that sails. No, friendship is a ship. It falls when one hits an iceberg. Yeah, for sure, agree with that. Jones says Bert is a comedian that just works hard and promotes himself, but his material is a worse man. Agreed. That podcast is annoying as fuck with Bert Crashes laughs at like Bill Burr solo podcast sometimes. Yeah, for sure. So again, maybe it's for the benefit, maybe it's for the best in general going forward. Everyone kind of went their separate ways and the dependency for that little crew kind of dwindled. But God almighty, man, where's the loyalty in friendship? Where is the loyalty in friendship? Move on from there. Why is not chat box coming up? I don't see. I want the chat box to come up here. I don't know why it's not there. Let me see if I can get it up. It should be here, right? Is it there? Oops. Oops, there. Where's the chat box? Why isn't the chat box showing up? I don't know. Is that there? The chat box is there, but it's not showing for some reason. Not sure why. But hey, what can you do? It is what it is. So, next on the list, what else do we have here to talk about? Oh, so this is an interesting video. So supposedly, let's just rewind this a little bit. This guy with these little protruding nipples. It says, meanwhile in LA, a buddy verbally harasses a young woman after she allegedly declined giving him her number. This is always a bit of a self-own, isn't it, when this sort of things happen, man? And, you know, I think most dudes know. Don't get me wrong, talking to young ladies is very difficult. It's super nerve-wracking, especially when you don't know what to say and you don't really have much game. But this sort of reaction never is going to endear yourself to the opposite sex. It's not going to give you a boost of confidence. You're not telling her or putting her in her place. If anything, you're showing just how fragile your masculinity and ego is, that because somebody decided to kind of, you know, rebuff, or they didn't share your enthusiasm for their looks, that you decided to go all helter-skelter on them. It probably isn't the right reaction, but hey, people are odd in it. Let's see what Yes do. Let's see his reaction regardless, and let's see what he did.
I recommend you just 5-2 steps away. You got me up against the car right now?
Are you up against the car?
Can you back away from me? I'm sorry.
Are you up against the car?
What's he doing?
And no one's gonna pay attention.
You see what happens in real life though, right? She kind of speaks through a muffled face mask to a lady walking by. This guy's harassing me, and people are just so like, hey, look, I just want to live my life, leave me alone, I've got stuff to do. They don't want to get involved, that she just walks by her. Now, you could say that the lady that walked by was like, you know what, it's daytime, it's unlikely that this guy in a salmon t-shirt with a dog is going to assault this lady in broad daylight, so she just carried on going. But that's a very sad indication of the human spirit, that someone would just leave another woman at the hands of this stranger that's obviously berating her, and she's got her phone out. It's like, you got to do better, man.
Attention to you, because you're dumb and you're a stupid blue Asian haired girl.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Fuck you. Fuck you.
What? I was literally just standing here.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
The dog's crying.
You know,
what is wrong with this guy?
I can record you dumb bitch. I can record you too. I can record you. Hey, you see how stupid you are?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there, man. Some people they're just going through stuff, and I think, again, I'm blaming it all on the lockdown, man. I think people's mental health is really, really suffering during these times that we're just living in this, you know, enforced isolation from all other human beings. I'd imagine so. That's my assumption anyway. But hey, what do I know? What do I know? What do I know? Come on, load. Why isn't the screen showing? Oh, okay, we have to move on there. Is it going to show or not? No, it's not. Is it going to show? Okay, exit. Okay, so what is next on here? Oh, you guys seen this, innit? I'm assuming most of you have seen this. Please tell me you have. So, Kendall Jenner broke the internet via some BTS shots from a shoot she was doing from a lingerie line for, I guess, Kim Kardashian's thing, Skims. And it's just interesting, man, how much attention and reaction these people garner from the internet. I don't really understand it. I don't really get the outrage. I really don't. Like, you know, they've shown us through decades of reality TV and, you know, magazine spreads and interviews that they're a pretty materialistic family, right? For the most part, it's not an insult to the Kardashians and the Jenners at all. They've told you they're all about the image. They told you they're all about the looks. They're all about the designer. They're all about the brands. They're all about the homes and whatever it may be. So they have to kind of keep up that lifestyle, right, by doing whatever they can, right, which is cosmetic surgery, working out a bunch, promoting flat tummy teas, whatever it may be. All those things are very much online and in brand with what they are as people. So whenever I see people reacting so strongly to these sort of images, it really makes me wonder, what sort of reality they're living in. Like, this is no surprise. This isn't some random person who suddenly was obese and then decided to look this way. This is somebody who has committed their entire lives to being hot and selling that hotness on Instagram and through brands and through advertisements and whatever it may be. And specifically with Kendall Jenner, she's a supermodel, a legit runway supermodel, right? And they look like this. This is what they generally look like. Now, the issue with this is that she probably most likely did Photoshop or tune up the image itself of her standing in front of a mirror behind the scenes shoot for the Skims line. She probably did some tweaking in terms of her hips, which kind of caused the belly button to look like that. Her hips probably don't look as wide in real life and all this sort. She kind of exaggerated her form. Maybe the thigh gap isn't as exaggerated, or whatever it may be. Cool, there are some changes here and there, but she generally, I guess, day to day looks like this. That's just kind of what she's kind of decided to do because it pays her bills, right? Because again, like I said, she's one of the highest paid runway models in the world, especially considering her background and da-di-da-di-da. She got into it quite late, all this sort of malarkey. But it's just odd. I just think sometimes the negative reaction to this sort of stuff has more to do with people's own insecurities than it has to do with them. Because, you could say, oh yeah, she's promoting an unhealthy body image, but is she really? She's not telling you to look like this. She's not telling you it's healthy. They're not selling you a plan. Like, they're just showing you what they're about, innit? Consistently, unapologetically. And it's up to you. Again, this is the problem I have with a lot of these things. Social media is free. You can just turn off your feed. You can just walk away. You can unfollow. You can block. You can hide certain things so you're not following them, so you're not kind of paying attention to it. But again, like, people don't understand that the more you kind of get outraged with this sort of stuff and you post about it and you react to it, the more that you're kind of helping them to, amplify their voice and to ultimately reach more people, which essentially you wouldn't want if you think they're a bad influence, right? It's so odd. It's really, really a bizarre situation that they've kind of found themselves in. But yeah, I don't really see the issue personally. Again, they've kind of been put on this earth to serve a purpose, and this is their purpose. They kind of live it unapologetically. You don't need to be tuned into them again, day to day, because you just don't follow them, and you could probably stay away from most of the news. They do find a way to kind of permeate and pop your timeline, even if you're not trying to hear about them in general, because that's a level of notoriety that they have. But I think that our reaction to it was way overboard, especially when you consider how glowingly people talk about people like Lizzo and stuff, right? When she's posting images of herself. 'Cause that's the issue I have. It's all okay if you want to be body positive and promote the idea of natural bodies, quote unquote, and fuller sizes and bigger women, blah blah blah, which I think is really important. And actually, the main culprit for the unacceptance or the unwillingness for society to change how people view of women is probably women. I think men are more than happy to have images of ladies, real ones, on billboards. It's mostly other women who want to see this sort of aspirational figure on these kind of things. Unfortunately, they want to be seduced by that fantasy, whatever it may be in terms of body shape. It's all well and good celebrating the more fuller sizes. So why isn't it okay for somebody who's rail thin to also celebrate the fact that they're rail thin? It reminds me a lot of that kind of quote from Kate Moss, right? Nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, right? And then she had to kind of retract it and take it back after loads of people came out and complained over the years and said how harmful it was. People got tattoos of it. It was a big talking point. But ultimately, if that's her life and that's her, that's what you basically committed yourself to, a life of just materialism and image consciousness, then maybe the idea that being skinny is more important than what you eat is probably true. It probably rings some truth to it, right? And I think if you're allowed to scuff your face with donuts and, promote your back rolls and belly rolls, you should be okay to kind of promote the fact that your rib cage is protruding out of your body. That should be okay too. Don't get me wrong. Both ends of the spectrum are probably severely unhealthy and probably not the way you'd want to bring up your daughters. But I don't necessarily see the way all of this is controversial or has any sort of bearing on people's everyday lives. It doesn't necessarily, right? These people are employed or are put on this God's green earth to do exactly that, I think, in my regard. And I don't know, man. I just think it's a little bit over the top personally, but hey, What do I know? What there's the whole empire is built on Kim's sex tape. Thank you, Ray J. Yeah, yeah, mate. Yeah, I don't think anywhere else in the history of the world apart did Paris do one? I think Paris Hilton might have had a sex tape, right? Has there been anybody else in the history of the world that's had such a come up off the back of a sex tape? Probably not in it. But again, people like to hold it over. I think people use Kim's sex tape like they were kind of, you know, before Tom Brady won the Super Bowl with the Buccaneers, people were basically saying the only reason he has all those rings was because of Bill Belichick, and he purposely decided to kind of step away from that franchise and go somewhere else so he could prove, no, I'm the reason we won that ring. I played as equal as a part as Bill Belichick proved, innit? And I think with Kim Kardashian, people like to hold the sex tape over her head or the family's head and be like, oh, you're only popular because of the sex tape, but she did really blow up even further in the ways that people would probably never had imagined away from the sex tape. Like, people would have probably thought, like, you wouldn't have thought she would be like a mum of four, would you, off the back of that sex tape? You would have imagined she would have just continued being an older harlot in the way that, you know, Alasa Pippen is still out here trying to slam all these young dudes, but she's not. She's just a mum, right, who happens to look banging. So she's kind of evolved and changed from that somewhat and pivoted away from it. That's what I mean. I don't think there's ever been a more successful person off the back of a sex tape that was fairly lackluster for the most part, from what I remember hearing about, right? Because I obviously didn't watch it because, you know, I'm a Christian and that. Let's move on. Oh, we got good news here courtesy of the BBC. COVID rapid test could help reopen clubs. This is probably the best news I've heard in this entire time that we've been in lockdown. I really hope that this is true, and I'm really hoping the only bit of other news I'm really hoping to hear is news regarding gyms and stuff. I really want to see that reopening very, very soon. Hopefully that happens, but this is obviously a little snippet of good news for us at the moment. It says quick corona testing could enable nightclubs and theatres to open. Boris Johnson has suggested. The PM said rapid lateral flow tests could be used by those parts of the economy we could not get open last year. That in combination with vaccination will probably be the route forward, he told Downing Street press conference, which is amazing because we never even heard him mentioning the phrase nightclubs in the first place. So for this to happen, it's just really, really good news. So hopefully that happens very, very soon. What else is happening here? Holidays, obviously, bookings are jumping up because there's some good news on the horizon with the vaccine and shit, so that's good to hear. And then what else we have here? Oh, we have this is bit of a UK centric news here, courtesy of UK Gossip TV. So Katie Price, a fairly popular public figure here, a former what was she? A former page 3 model, I don't know, formerly known as Jordan, changed to Katie Price, you know, constantly in the headlines. I don't know, man. And then obviously she's unfortunately has a child in Harvey who has some learning difficulties, developmental difficulties, whatever that kind of term is. And I always feel, I don't know, man, like she has obviously a skill and a talent for remaining in the public eye. She always finds a way to kind of make herself the center of the story and kind of make sure there's column inches that are dedicated to her. She's dedicated her entire life to being that person. But I kind of feel like this constant updates and development on her battle to kind of manage looking after her son with his obviously difficulties, and then eventually having to put him in some sort of care home because he's obviously getting to a stage where she can't look after him on her own because she's in a wheelchair. I just feel it's a little bit exploitive. I don't know, maybe it's just me, maybe I'm overreacting and I'm kind of being fair and she kind of needs to share some of this news, but I feel like this is stuff that we don't necessarily need to hear as a public, I think personally. But anyway, this is what it says. It says Harvey back home from hospital after having a bad reaction to COVID jab. Let's play a bit of the clip here.
Where did Harvey go last night?
Hospital.
And why did you go to the hospital?
Because I was not feeling right.
You didn't feel right, did you? What did you have the day before yesterday? You had a
blood
injection.
Yeah.
Didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
So guys, Harvey obviously is home and he's safe and he's on form today. What did you ask for at 4 o'clock this morning?
Like, why is she doing this? Like, why are you doing this to your kid? Like, why is she doing this to do all this nonsense? It's just
bloods, ECG,
I don't know. Kate Price's son rushed to hospital with high blood pressure and temperature, uncontrollable shaking, just hours after receiving a COVID vaccine. It's just, I don't know, man. I get it, man. It's a horrible story. She's having to do this all on her own. The father of this kid is, essentially disowned the child. He doesn't want anything to do with him. I get it. It's tragic, but God almighty, man. Let's have some respect in it. Let's kind of honor the kid and just let him, I don't know, live a quasi-normal life without having himself plastered all over the news. I don't know. I just find it a bit gross, personally. Maybe it's just me and I'm overreacting, but I just find it a bit gross. Next on the list. Oh, Priti Patel calls Black Lives Matter dreadful. Yeah, let's hear this. Priti Patel's an absolute gangster, man. She's always in the news. People hate this woman so much and she doesn't give a fuck. Look at that little smirk on her face. Like, I know I'm going to trigger you motherfuckers. So the caption here says, Home Secretary Priti Patel appeared on LBC today and criticized the Black Lives Matter protest movement and further stated that anti-racist protests during the summer were just a moment. She's the best. That's what just to say.
On the Black Lives Matters and, sort of footballers and stars taking this pointless knee. My question is the importance of putting money where your knee is and what your thoughts are about the importance of making sure that we have facilities in place that can become competent role models to help some of these misguided youth.
Do you support taking the knee, Home Secretary?
Well, last summer was quite a moment, actually, with all the protests that we saw taking place. And obviously, I'm going to bring it back. You saw policing as well coming under a great deal of pressure through some of the protests. I don't support protests, and I also did not support the...
I don't support protest. Fair enough, you're not supporting people looting shops and, burning down local businesses and all that malarkey, because ultimately that kind of doesn't serve any real purpose to the cause. It just damages the local communities that these people live in that are protesting. Yeah, right. So it's not beneficial to the movement whatsoever. But the idea that protesting itself you don't support is absolutely insane. That's part of living in a democracy. People are allowed to speak up and protest via social media, via, protesting in the street, Parliament Square, regardless of what it may be. You're allowed to speak up and kind of voice your displeasure with what's going on in the government. That is quintessentially at the heart of living in a democracy. So she's literally insane for saying that. But again, I don't have an issue with her having a problem with the Black Lives Matter protest, because I'm assuming there's a lot of black people who probably had an issue with it themselves, right? They didn't necessarily agree with the approach that they took. Maybe the cause was just in terms of bringing light to police brutality and excessive force within minority communities, blah, 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 blah. But the means to go about it probably isn't the best, to go and, burn down your local carpet shop or car dealership or restaurant or cafe, or regardless of what it may be, do you know what I mean? Or refuse to pay rent, because these same people are the ones that live in the same community you're living in. It's not like you're kind of sticking it to the man, right? You're essentially hurting people that look just like you. But let's continue to hear what she says.
Protests that were associated...
You don't support protest?
I didn't support the protest.
Oh, that protest. I thought you said you didn't support protest at all. I know it's a draconian government.
Oh, Jesus, I was about to say, yeah, she could. He was like, what?
But I didn't know I could go to jail for 10 years for protesting. But do go on.
Well, those protests were dreadful. And just
indeed.
That put on the police in particular.
Right.
But Ben has made a point about...
On the Black Lives Matter...
supporting role models or encouraging more role models. And, we should always do that, around causes.
But what about taking the knee? You might note, I don't know how much of a sports fanatic you are, you might note that some Scotland rugby players decided they would not. You have some soccer players, football players now saying it's past. Would you still take the knee, Home Secretary?
No, I wouldn't. I would not. I would not have at the time either. There are other ways in which people can express their opinions. Protesting in the way in which people did last summer was not the right way at all.
I don't have an issue with that personally. I think the knee was just as effective as the black squares. I think they basically ultimately served no real need to change. It brought light to things. I think, the actual issues at hand, again, like we proved with that earlier article with those two police officers that knocked that 75-year-old guy on the floor, cracked his head open, left him in hospital for a month, and were acquitted of all charges. Those things need to change, right? Systemic, fundamental, structural change needs to come about in police forces and government in terms of how they deal with people in the inner cities. I don't think taking a knee and posting a black square on your profile is going to change those things. things in one way, shape, or form. But maybe it's a step in the right direction. You're trying to bring light to the issue. But I think nowadays these sort of performative actions that people do, they feel as if that's enough, right? You feel as if you've put a hashtag out, you put up a black square, you take a knee, you raise your fist up in a clinched manner, you cry on the microphone like, who's that donut that was crying in the park, right? It's all performative. It doesn't necessarily serve any, it doesn't serve anything, right? What actually needs to happen is boots on the ground, local communities, investing in it, education, awareness, training, whatever it may be, in order to make sure that people in minority communities aren't put in a situation where their lives are essentially going to be put at risk or in jeopardy through their interaction or, you know, communication running into police officers or the law in general, right? Because we know kind of how disproportionately these people are kind of put in jail, especially considering their backgrounds and lack of means and all this sort of malarkey. Again, I don't really have that much an issue. I think some of these headlines end up, they just kind of, they purposely try and make you have a reaction that is outraged. But if you actually listen to what she said, especially when you consider how kind of pro-police Priti Patel is in general, right? She seems to be somebody that kind of, you know, she kind of rides that police authoritarian idea really hard. It's part of her kind of brand. It's no surprise that she wouldn't be down for protesting. It's no surprise she wouldn't take the knee. Like, you know, what do you expect from her? Do you know what I mean? It is what it is. Let's move on. What else do we have here? Oh, Gina Carano's fighting back. Gina Carano's fighting back. Gina Carano's fighting back. So obviously most of you are aware that a couple of days ago Gina Carano was fired from The Mandalorian because of her racy Instagram story post where she compared the plight of being a conservative in Hollywood with the suffering of the Jews at the hands of Nazis, right? Which obviously, when you evoke such strong memories from the past, especially ones that persecuted an entire race and community of people simply because of their choice of religion, it definitely is going to cause a strong reaction, and people just weren't down for it. But in general, if you're familiar with the story, you'll know that her card was marked the moment that she decided not to put her pronouns in her bio on social media. I think people in Disney and the wider community, especially within the modern day Lucasfilm, kind of wanted to have any excuse to kind of get her out, because essentially she kind of signaled that she wasn't on the left, she wasn't a Democrat, she wasn't a liberal. And, you know, especially nowadays, for the most part, I don't know why it is in entertainment now, you have to kind of, you know, have the same political beliefs. I'm not sure why it's even important what political beliefs these actors and actresses do have in the first place, but for some reason there seems to be a little bit of a resistance against people coming into it with other, you know, there seems to be a resistance against people who kind of tend to lean right. You know, it is what it is. I guess it's their place. They can do what they want to do, but it's unfortunate that somebody that had a, you know, an entire spin-off show that was going to be in development from The Mandalorian in terms of Gina Carano, essentially career got entirely cancelled. Now, the good thing about it is that the community is kind of gathered around her, right? The Phantom, what do they call it? The Fandom Menace have essentially kind of all rallied around her. Loads of really good YouTube channels I follow, like Nerd Erotic, Geeks and Gamers, who I don't agree with his politics completely, but, you know, he's a great channel. The Quartering too can be a bit hyperbolic. But there's a lot of people that kind of rallied again around there and basically saying, nah, you're not gonna get cancelled. And I think that is ultimately where I stand with this. I'm not a fan of cancel culture one bit. I think I'm a free speech absolutionist. I think I would probably say I'm on that ilk, just because I think you should be free to say what you want, but then you should also be free to accept the consequences that come with what you say. I think the fact that you can't say certain things is just obscene, but I think also they have the right, if they deem that you're not a good fit culturally for their company, to tell you to go kick rocks. But you have to be allowed to say what you want and say what you think. You can't be kind of gagged. And I think the fact that she's a fairly mediocre actress, right? But had kind of cultivated this kind of cultish fan base around her because she's kind of spoke her mind, has really worked against Disney and Lucasfilm. Because if it was anyone else, this would have been a non-story. But because of the kind of fandom that kind of engulfs her, and the fact that she's a bit more outspoken and a legit badass, because obviously she's a former MMA and UFC fighter, it kind of has backfired and in terms of how they cancelled her. And again, like I said, cancel culture I'm not a fan of, because I don't like when these institutions, these big corporations decide that your card is, that you're done in Hollywood, or you're done having a career and you should get kicked out. It should be up to the fans, it should be up to the viewers, the customers, to decide if you have a career or not. You know, if they decide we don't want to hear from you anymore, we don't like your views, we think you're irrelevant, that's when you should get deleted and kind of taken away from. That's when your kind of ability and the privilege that you have to earn a career being, working in the arts and entertainment should be taken away from you. But no institution should declare that you should not be allowed to earn a living. And again, she's fighting back, and I think this might be a watershed moment, because this was a cancellation that didn't need to occur. She could have easily got a kind of a slap on the wrist and basically told in uncertain terms. Because I think, what would be good? I think in general, what would be good as a blanket rule, I think some production companies have it. There should just be a blanket rule that if you're involved in anything concerning Disney or Lucasfilm, you can't be political. You can't speak about anything societal, nothing at all. In terms of when you're contracted, to work with Disney on a particular project, TV series, you're just not permitted to tweet it, because especially in the current climate we're in now, things are so tense and hot. You're just bound to say something that's going to rub somebody up the wrong way. And, you're basically paid to play make-believe on TV. That's what your main objective should be, not sharing your ideas on, climate change and poverty and homelessness and gun control. Like, that's not your lane whatsoever, especially when you're in production and you're filming a show. You should be maybe focusing on presenting your light into making the best show possible. So there probably should just be a blanket ban on both sides. But here, continues from Deadline. This article kind of expounds on it. It says Gina Carano hits back, announces new movie project with Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire. They can't cancel us if we don't let them. Kind of taking the Joey Diaz approach to things, right? Where he's sort of like, no, you're not cancelling me because I've already spoken my truth. You can't then use my truth against me. And Joey Diaz's fans, the church of what's happening right now, crew rallied behind him and got around him. But let's continue here with the article. It says, less than 24 hours after her explosive ouster from Star Wars series The Mandalorian for incendiary social media posts, Gina Carano has hit back at her detractors and revealed a new project she's working on with the conservative website Daily Wire. Carano told us today, the Daily Wire is helping make one of my dreams, to develop and produce my own film come true. I cried out and my prayer was answered. I'm sending out a direct message of hope to everyone living in fear of cancellation by a totalitarian mob. I have only just begun using my voice, which is now freer than ever before, and I hope it inspires others to do the same. They can't cancel us if we don't let them, which is really, again, like, it goes to show the balls on this lady, considering, again, she was I would say periphery character, but she wasn't, she wasn't the main character in the actual series itself. She had an easy lane for her just to kind of milk the money, go right off into the sunset, enjoy her spin-off show, but she kind of made herself the quasi-sacrificial lamb in order to kind of draw a line in the sand with all this cancellation nonsense, and put herself in a position where she could essentially be free to do what she wanted. And I guess the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's media platform, were the ones that went to back her. It says the following. Dan Ferrick, as a Mandalorian character would say, Carano will develop, produce and star in an up-and-coming film, which the Daily Wire says will release exclusively to its members as the community company looks to bolster its entertainment division. Details are still kept under wraps, but it will be produced part by Daily Wire partnership with Bone Tomahawk producer Dalla Sonia and his bona fide legend Banner. He says, we could not be more excited to be working with Gina Carano, an incredible talent dumped by Disney and Lucasfilm for affinity of return Hollywood left. That is what Daily Wire exists to do, provide an alternative not just for consumers but for the creators who refuse to bow to the mob, said Daily Wire's co-founder Ben Shapiro. Interesting, isn't it? Ben Shapiro is going to turn into media mogul. Who would have seen that arc, character development? Amazing. It says here, we're eager to bring amazing but also kind of concerning, because Ben Shapiro doesn't strike me as the most artistic fellow in the world, right? He doesn't necessarily strike me as a cultural savant. I don't know. It sounds a bit crap, but I think in general the what this kind of is going to promote going forward, the hope it's going to give some people and maybe some Hollywood stars to maybe come out and be a bit more vocal in terms of their support of who they want in politics. I don't know. Let's continue. Corona's controversial social media post, described by Lucasfilm as abhorrent, saw her turfed from the Mandalorian by the studio and ditched by a agency UTA. Sneeze, sorry. Oh. Oh, sorry about that. Continue. The former MMA star and Deadpool actress played bounty hunter Cara Dune on the first 2 seasons of Lucasfilm Disney hit series. Actress raised hell by sharing and comparing the current divide political climate in the US to Nazi Germany. Jews were beaten in the streets, he says, not by Nazis or soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by their children, because history is edited. Most people don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up and thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? Now again, that's obviously a racy comment to make. I'm pretty sure now that not enough time has passed that she basically burned the boats so she wouldn't have to go back. I think she purposely got herself fired. That's my kind of conclusion on it. I don't think you put out these sort of memes and these statements knowing full well the current political climate we're in, thinking you're going to keep your job. It's obviously a bit of a racy comparison, but there is some truth to it, right? This idea that you can kind of vilify and cancel people based on their views or their religious beliefs is really abhorrent, especially when you consider they're just words, right? They're not, she's in no place or position to influence policy. She's, especially when you consider the fact that, the presidency has changed hands now. There's no real damage you think that she actually can cause in the long term, unless you actually believe, like some of those idiots do, that words of violence. But I don't know, man. It's just, it's a sad state of affairs in general going forward. But again, maybe this is going to be a watershed moment. Continues here, another photo of Corona's Instagram story featured a person with several masks covering their face. Here the caption, meanwhile in California, so she's a bit anti-mask, a bit anti-vax, the standard tropes in it that people put out there. Both posts were scrubbed from the actress' Instagram yesterday, but others picked it up and reposted. The actress has previously called to controversy for posts about election fraud and gender pronouns. Last month we revealed the right-wing website Daily Wire acquired its first feature film school shooter movie Run, Hide, Fight, produced by Dallas Sonia under his Bonfire Legend banner. Daily Wire says the film drew more than 300,000 viewers during a 3-hour live stream premiere. Who's watching a 3-hour live stream of a flipping school shooter movie? Bruv, the people on the right, man, they've got some weird taste in the arts, innit? Imagine developing a flipping... I wonder what Gina Carano's movie is going to be about. Is it going to be about her journey to be a fighter? Is it going to be... I don't know. Like, imagine watching a flipping school shooter movie, man. That sounds flipping horrible. The new alliance with Corona raises the prospect of the AY's Film Corporation becoming the home to those going against Hollywood grain in controversial ways. Not that Disney will be worried by that, though, however, Corona is represented by Scott Sharp at the syndicate. So, I wonder, is it going to be a competitor to Disney? Probably not. Is it going to be a high quality movie? Probably not. But I think it's good to have these options and these platforms available. So if you want to be a bit racy, if you want to court controversy, if you want to kind of ruffle some feathers, but you're not allowed to maneuver and operate within the Hollywood ecosystem, that you have an opportunity to go somewhere else that you're going to support you. I think that's perfectly fine. I don't see any real issue with that whatsoever, personally. Again, I have an issue with the fact that, I don't think conservatives are known for their artistic taste, but you could maybe see somebody like what is his name? Clint Eastwood. Isn't he a Republican, if I'm not mistaken? He is, right? I remember he did that funny quote unquote video where he kind of had an empty chair on a stage and he was berating Barack Obama. Remember that bullshit? Like, that's America's a wild place, man. So I can maybe see someone like him going on there. What's his name? Not Mel Gibson. Is it Mel Gibson? Who's the other guy? Is it Mel Gibson? I Mel Gibson. There's a few people that are kind of closeted Republicans, right? Maybe you could see them performing on that platform. I doubt it, because the money, mainstream Hollywood pays them is probably too much. But yeah, good luck to Gina Carano. What's the list here? People are saying in the chat. We'll see what you guys are saying. Jones said my employer wouldn't accept it if I tweet those things. Ben Shapiro was not accepted by the Hollywood Bobos. Now he's doing his own Hollywood. That's true. Harden the Paint said AZ with scoops. Pick up Hardens Paint. The whole empire is built. Cool. Again, if you're on the stream still, thanks for tuning in. Been a pleasure to have your company. If again, make sure that you're smashing that like button for me, hitting subscribe and doing all that good stuff and supporting the show any way you can. That's greatly appreciated. What else we have here? Oh yeah, let's end it with this one. It's the real reason why I left. Now let's fob this off. So this is courtesy of Bryan Callen. I think he appeared on a podcast, and as I mentioned prior, he's another comedian in the LA comedy scene that was cancelled vis-a-vis some really pretty serious allegations, right, of sexual assault, right? I think in total it was 3 or 4 women, I'm not too sure the number, but one of them accused him of rape, the others accused him of some sort of sexual assault. They were very detailed accounts that were provided by the LA Times. Whether or not you believe them or not is one or the other, but there was a lot of things in those stories that you can kind of, if you're a fan of T-Fat-K, especially the original Fight and the Kid with Bryan and Brendan Shaw, then you would know that a lot of the stuff that was said by some of the women kind of sounded like stuff that Bryan would say, and it kind of sounded a bit believable. And the fact that a lot of these, again, it's not a real good example because everyone abandoned Chris D'Elia, even though I don't think he's guilty of the crimes he's been accused of. But the fact that Bryan essentially got kicked off his own podcast and was left in the wilderness, Joe Rogan hasn't uttered his name. I think maybe once he's uttered his name. He's not spoken about the issue, not had him on his podcast to kind of clear his name whatsoever. Maybe lend some credence to there is some validity in the allegations themselves. I again was pretty outspoken in my fact that I didn't really like how kind of Bryan responded and dealt with the allegations. I think he going on this sort of full frontal attack and calling it cancel culture is ridiculous. You're being accused of a crime. It's not cancel culture. People are accusing you of a pretty serious allegation here. You should deal with it in a serious manner. Then he got to a position where he started. He sued one of the accused's husbands because of slander, and obviously the guy was going over the top. He was calling all the comedy clubs that Bryan was supposedly meant to perform at, and basically reminding them of the allegations in the hopes that they'd cancel his shows. So obviously taking money out of his pocket, blah, 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 blah. And like I said previously, I'm not a fan of cancel culture because generally the corporations and the platforms themselves try and cancel you. And I think the cancellation should always come from the customers and also come from the fans. If they decide that after reading all the information regarding your allegations that they want you to be gone, then you're gone. But it's not up to these corporations to do so. But again, I still wasn't a fan of Bryan Callen's approach. I thought it was a bit tasteless. It lacked in, he didn't really take the allegations seriously, which again, considering the climate we're in, and if he wants to get a career again, you just have to kind of lend some, you kind of have to deal with them in some sort of serious manner, because if you don't, no one's ever going to listen to no one's ever going to give you a chance to, get back your position or be welcome back into the industry. Now, I still think in general Bryan's Hollywood career is done. He just about managed to get one off the back of the success of the podcast and being around the LA comedy scene. It was a long time coming. He finally was able to secure, the sitcom that he was in, the Goldbergs, and he had his spin-off as well, show that he was doing for a bit. And obviously the cameo, a short cameo he had in the Joker was a really good way to kind of cement the fact that he'd finally been accepted as a serious actor in Hollywood, something that he was obviously wanted to do, something that he was his main passion, more so than maybe comedy, even though he's really good at stand-up comedy, and he already said the podcast that seriously, blah, 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 blah. But I just think the way that it transpired, the fact that, the allegations were really serious, he didn't deal with them in the right way, I just don't think there's ever going to be an option for him to come back. And I think, by and large, maybe this is just his way of maybe not accepting the reality. But again, like I said, I think the reality is his career as he knows it is pretty much over. He basically has to just, at the moment he's relegated to doing a podcast behind a paywall on Patreon. He finally now came out of the wilderness and does one with Steve Byrne, who seems like a bit of a cool dude, but the podcast so far I've heard from it sucks ass. It's not the same thing as Brendan. I was doing a show with Brendan on the Fire and the Kid, even though Brendan's a goof, they have a really good chemistry, blah 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 blah. He went on a podcast recently and explained the reason why he left. Let's watch what he has to say.
I've been a big fan for a long time, and we've listened to Fighter and the Kid, big inspiration for us. You guys are like like the most honest podcast we've heard out there. And I was just like, yeah. And I just want you to go through this and like what happened and, you know, what that looks like now.
You mean Fighter and the Kid?
Yeah, with Fighter and the Kid.
We literally used to, when we started the show 5 years ago, Fighter and the Kid was one of our inspirations. The chemistry and the banter and the way you guys put it together.
Well, what was so hard is like, so Brennan and I are still very close. We talk every day. And
yeah, but that's the thing, that you talk every day, but you're not on the show, are you? That is the issue. That must sting a bit, innit? Even though Brenda did good by him, and supposedly, according to him, he breaks him off some money from the podcast and still, you know, sends him that, even though, you know, Bryan is allegedly the son of a very wealthy banker, so he's not going to be hiring for money regardless, but still, you know, paying whatever alimony support he has now, finalizing a divorce, living on your own in LA, it's not cheap. So the fact that Brendan is helping him out is still great, but still, the inability to go on his own show that he created with Brendan, to clear his name, to put money in it, you know, to keep himself in, you know, in the public consciousness, must be really disappointing. And basically it's their own fault. The fact that they signed up with Cast Media, you know, got a paycheck, took some weight off their shoulders, but then essentially what it led to was them having bosses who were basically able to say, hey, he can't be on here because of sponsors, which is, you know, essentially goes against everything they did when they kind of built the show up. But hey, what can you do? Let's continue.
what was so hard was when you get canceled, when somebody just makes up lies about you, you can't do anything about it anymore. And you have to just, I went on the offensive, and I was never going to be quiet about it because it was just insane. So I went on the offensive and I said, I'm not going away like everybody else. Fuck this, because I know who I am, and so does everybody else I know. And so, but what happened?
The irony is, though, when the allegations came up about Chris D'Elia, he kind of went away and didn't really back up his friend immediately. Do you remember the whole sobbing, Brendan Schaub, I can't talk, Bryan basically saying they weren't really good friends, they didn't hang out with each other much, they only hanged out when they went on tour, and they didn't tour as much as everyone thinks they toured. He doesn't know him that well. He made every excuse under the book to kind of save his career, and the moment his career was in jeopardy, he went to go on the offensive. Where was that courage and that wherewithal and that determination there for your supposed not friend?
What happens is, with cancel culture, corporations, your sponsors go, we can't. Right now, we just don't want to. We're afraid.
Yeah, because you had an allegation, right?
Yeah, right.
There was no evidence, no nothing. Just someone said something.
21 years old.
21 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And what was the first thing that happened when you? How did you know? Oh shit!
I think it was like 8 hours before that. My lawyer called me and said, they're writing a story, and you just hear that all you hear is that there are allegations. And when I read them, I went, this is stuff they said I said. You got to remember that these two women said I said something. It wasn't even nothing physical. It was what I said. And then a woman from 1999 had an allegation, and I was like, and the first thing I read, I went, who? I go, that's not possible. It made no sense. But you don't know the detailed story they're going to tell. You don't know any of that. If that was the case, I could have mounted an attack. I could have been like, this is fucking crazy. But all you can do when somebody does that, and you have an activist who's a journalist, because these people are activists, they're not journalists. Right. All you can do, and they know who you are. You're the enemy. I speak too much. I talk too much. And people know my politics. I'm not even, you can't even call me right wing. I'm just a guy who believes in freedom and individual responsibility and those things. I'm fucking socially liberal as fuck. But it doesn't matter. I was lumped in with a group of people who were considered problematic. That's what happens. And I was told that. I was told to shut up by people.
Were you told that beforehand?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, because I was told by some pretty smart, intelligent, powerful people.
From the stuff that you would talk about on Fighter?
Sure, and on Rogan and stuff like that. And I was like,
really?
Fuck off. I got nothing. I'm got nothing to hide. I'm been a good guy.
But he lost his entire career. I think that advice was pretty permanent. He probably should have taken that advice, isn't it? And again, this is probably him just saying the wrong things, not getting his facts straight. It was not probably for his own strong opinions, because if you're familiar with the podcast, Bryan's opinions aren't that strong. He kind of, moves with the wind. But let's just remind ourselves of the allegations, right? Because he's trying to make it seem as if these were just kind of superfluous allegations that were basically put out there to kind of muddy his name. But they were pretty serious from my recollections. This is courtesy of Variety. Let's see if we can get this up on the page. Come on, load. Is it going to load? Come on. Bear with me 1 sec. Let's make it load. Is it loading? Come on, get up. There we go. So this is courtesy of Variety, right? This is from July the 31st last year. Bryan Callen, a comedian, has been accused of sexual assault and misconduct by 4 women, right? In a report from the Los Angeles Times. Callen just led to a raped Catherine Fiore Tigerman, an actor and comedian whose credits include The Wedding Band, blah, blah, blah. Another woman, Rachel Green, alleges that Callen tried to force himself on her during an encounter which took place in American Apparel in 2009. So him saying it was a 21-year-old allegation, cool, but still it's rape, so it's a serious one. The second one is somebody alleging that he got a bit handsy when he was trying on some clothes in American Apparel in 2009. If you read the account, it sounds like something Bryan Callen would do, trying on trousers, coming out in underpants, waving around, he supposedly allegedly pinned her up against a wall and tried to shove his tongue down her throat, and she ran away and told one of her colleagues, and then he left the store, right? It sounds like something that you would imagine. I'm sure there's more to the story. Maybe the lady herself was flirting back with him and he kind of read the signals wrong, blah, 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 blah. But those 2 allegations are pretty serious. They're not like somebody saying that on a film set you said something really rude and you insulted their religion or you said something misogynistic. No, these are people who said you physically did something to them in close quarters that they deemed to be untoward, that they remember in great detail, which they shared with their friends. This isn't like, again, he's saying people said things. Continue. The most recent allegation in 2017, when Tiffany King, comedian previously performed in the same club, alleged that she was offered a stage time. Of course, this is the one that you can maybe argue, the says thing. The lady Tiffany King basically said Callen said that if you want stage time, she should give him a blowjob. Who knows if that actually happened? And then the other one, it says 4. What's the 4? Okay, the 4th is not really listed here. I don't know why that is. But anyway, those are some serious allegations, right? So this is so him kind of painting it as like people just saying he said stuff is really bizarre. And again, it's a real mismanagement of the situation. He really fucked himself over in this regard. I think he should have listened to his friends who told him to shut up, because instead he got himself in more trouble than he probably needed to get himself into. But let's continue and hear what he has to say.
My whole life.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not. Whatever the case, we can trace that back to Chris D'Elia and I had a show on Netflix. Mm-hmm. So you get lumped in with all this stuff. Mm-hmm. What happens is my podcast, after 7 years that I built, 7 years. The sponsors go, we can't. Your agent calls you and says, nobody will sponsor right now.
Wow, like that.
And so my fucking brother.
Like all of them?
All of them. My brother, because everybody's got dirt. Everybody's terrified. I'll explain what it is. It's like McCarthyism. But my brother, who I built a podcast for 7 years, we had to walk away. I had to protect him. I had to get away because otherwise his sponsors would jump.
Yeah. And again, rewriting history. That's not true. When the allegations first came about, they tried to get back on. He said he's going to explain everything on a Saturday podcast or something. Remember the weekend thing? He put out a crappy statement talking about cancel culture. Again, shoot himself in the foot. And then I guess in between the time that they recorded and put out that show and announced he's going to do a Saturday tell-all, somebody in Cast Media reached out and said that's not happening. The sponsors are all pulling away. You're not going to make any money in this podcast anymore. And again, it's their fault for signing up with Cast Media, because that maybe alleviated some of the administrative and marketing and brand and sales and advertising things that they were basically doing on their own, and outsourced it to Cast to kind of have a whole bevy of podcasts that they sponsor. I think they were formerly actually Impulsive fired him recently, right? Logan Paul's podcast, but they've got everybody from like the Portal to the Fire and the Kid. And then when obviously that Saturday podcast got scrapped, they then tried to do another show, because Bryan Callen was basically not permitted to go back on the Fire and the Kid, called the Fire in the Ring. So to rebrand it and do it in the same studio. Cast Media again told them, nope, you can't do that. And then after the fact is when they decided to launch a Patreon and do a show behind a paywall. And that couldn't happen because Brendan wasn't allowed to do that show because he's contracted with Cast under Fighter and the Kid, and he can't do another show with somebody that has those allegations over his head. So he's kind of framing it like he did this noble act of, my friend, you keep money on your table and food on your plate. That's not. No, he tried to hastily reply to some serious allegations in a really flippant way on the podcast that he should have dealt with in the serious nature that they've kind of been alleged to, especially when they've been put in a ragtag magazine, newspaper like the Los Angeles Times, with somebody that, I think it's that Amy Kaufman lady at that time was basically making it a mission to expose and shine a light on some of the assaulters and sexual abusers within the LA comedy scene. It was a really treacherous moment. He should have dealt with the allegations seriously, but he didn't. He tried to kind of steamroll his way through. He thought he was probably more famous than what he was, and the fans would rally around him, which they did in some respects with Patreon. They probably earned a good living from there, but overall, his career has suffered greatly from it. And again, this is somebody who, for the most part, again, being a fan, it seemed like his main love and his main drive was for him to be an actor. That's what he came to Hollywood for. He was kind of, told he would be the next Tom Hanks, right? Which obviously he didn't necessarily go on to fulfill. But his main love has always been to be involved in acting. He wanted to be in Hollywood. He wanted to be one of those people that go to these premieres and are casting these shows and casting these TV series and have a sitcom. The fact that he was super talented and great at stand-up comedy and was really funny on podcasts was just like an extra. But his actual main love was Hollywood. And the moment that got taken away from him, I guess he was just scrambling and wanting to stay afloat and keep himself relevant. He just did all these crazy shits and reacted to it really wrongly. And again, blamed it on cancel culture, which he then had to retract. And look at him now. He's on the podcast with these guys who I don't even know who their names are, and he's trying to explain himself and make it make sense and rewrite history again, making it sound worse than what it was, or making it worse actually than it is at the moment.
Wow. And so that's what fucking happens. And what happens is, listen, if you can come after somebody after 21 fucking years, where you're like, what?
Yeah.
What?
What do you do with that?
Everybody,
and it's a verbal thing. I thought it was actually
no. For the 21 years ago was an allegation of physical assault. But I mean, again, what you think I was walking around like do like what do you think I got away with something? You think I'm a psycho? Right. Was I wearing a stocking over my head? What are you out of your fucking mind?
Yeah.
There's no way to defend yourself against this insanity. So
there is, and it's not the way you did it.
You're guilty until it's like guilty until proven innocent.
But every guy that you know who's a comic or every powerful man in Hollywood, everybody is, including a lot of women who have husbands and sons and brothers. Everybody goes, they're terrified. Mm-hmm. If they can come after me, they can come after anybody. Mm-hmm. They just can. And that's a terrifying place to be, because every guy goes like this. They go, I dated a crazy. That was a crazy girl in college. I wonder if she's gonna,
You should just say something,
right,
dude. 21 years later?
Wow. So
are you kidding me? So this is when allegations become weaponized.
Yeah.
And don't kid yourself. It all goes away. And don't kid yourself. It's about murdering you. This is about murder. This is about, when you talk about canceling people, it's what it really means is we want to make sure you never work again and you're on the street and you can't feed your children, you can't pay your mortgage. It's nothing other than that. It's nothing less than total and absolute devastation. Don't tell me about, if you're a real scumbag, if you're a Harvey Weinstein or a Bill Cosby, yeah, man, I get it. The evidence is too overwhelming. Fuck off. Get out of here. Go to jail. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, though, you know, if people are getting canceled over a tweet, I'm talking about a tweet. Read the madness of crowds. A tweet. Somebody put, and it was like I didn't think about it. I was fat shaming someone, but I didn't realize it. And you got to save your career sometimes. This is a very dangerous time.
Now, did you have ownership in the show? And how did you?
Yes.
Did you have to sell it or just bounce?
No. I mean, I'm still in it, but it's something that I worry about for my children. I worry about for everyone. This is something that, and I think a lot of people are worried about it. And I think most people can't stand this cancel culture shit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I hear.
Again, I don't think it's cancel culture, man. I think he's really obfuscating, whatever it may be called. He's rewriting the narrative to make it make sense for him. And obviously he has to save his career, but it's not cancel culture. He was accused of something. He had plenty of time and opportunity to explain his side of the story and deal with it with the severity that that allegation probably deserved, and kind of, find a way to reintroduce himself back into public conversation without it kind of coming across like he's making it seem as if like he said something racy in a tweet or something. It wasn't necessarily that. And again, like I said previously, my stance on cancel culture is I'm not a fan of it. I don't like corporations deciding that when you can and cannot feed your family. I think that should be down to the fans. If they deem you to be surplus to requirements, if they're not a fan of your work, if they think you don't represent what they're into, they should be the ones ultimately that decide whether or not you have a career. It shouldn't be up to these corporations whatsoever. But still, you can't just openly disregard these allegations and try and carry on your normal everyday life with this hanging over your head and think it's going to work. It's not. And essentially anyway, his entire career has been taken away from him, probably never to be restored in any sort of meaningful way, which is maybe the greatest punishment he could serve for it. If he is guilty, if he's innocent, still, I think he kind of shot himself in the foot by not giving himself the ample opportunity to kind of say his piece in a clear and legible manner. But again, what do I know? Anyways, that has been Dear Open Tabs was it number 9 or number 8? Number 8 or number 9? One of them. I can't remember what number it is. But regardless, thanks again for tuning in. It's been a pleasure to have your company. I'm going to end the stream now. So again, if it's your first time tuning in, we've got over 13 people here live on the stream. Thank you for so much. Big up everybody else involved in the chat. Thank you for the engagement and keeping that flowing. Much appreciated. If it's your first time on this channel, please make sure you smash that like button for me, hit subscribe, and leave me comments and stuff, and share the channel for me. That'll be greatly appreciated. Of course, I have a podcast too, The Action Zinga Show. You can find on all major platforms that wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find it. Make sure you're downloading that and you're sharing that with your family and friends. That'll be greatly appreciated. I also have a Patreon that you can link up on as well, patreon.com/Agostino. Make sure you subscribe on there. I'm uploading bonus content on there, so make sure you get involved at patreon.com/Agostino, patreon.com/AGOSTINHO. Get involved on there. Much appreciated all your support, and I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Take care. Be safe. Peace out, people. Peace out. Thanks again for tuning in. It's been a pleasure to have your company. I'll see you again very soon.